What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Studs and Duds, the most comprehensive NFL player review series on the internet. I am your host, Marcus Whitman, and today we are going to be recapping the rising and falling players from the NFC conference from the month of November, really, weeks 9 through 12. Before we do get started, if you could do me a huge favor, please do show your support for my channel and this series by hitting that like button down below. It is a free and easy way to support this channel in a way that is more meaningful than you will know. Let's help Studs and Duds go viral. Head down there, hit that like button. Really appreciate it. We're going to be doing AFC this time next week. Thank you for your patience, AFC fans. And for those that are new to Studs and Duds, what this is we go team by team. We talk about which players are playing well, which players are playing poorly around the entire league. And while we do that, I will be showing you ratings changes for my own custom Madden roster, a roster I've been making since 2016. So while it is a video game, these ratings do come from my opinions on these players, and the changes are derived from my own film analysis and research, getting through all these games. So while it's a video game, it does reflect how I perceive these players in real life. So without further ado, let's get started. So kicking things off in the NFC North, we have Justin Fields, of course, stealing the show here in November, mostly with his legs, but you can't just overlook that. I mean, we all knew Fields was a really good athlete coming out of Ohio State, and we knew running was going to be a part of his game. But even at Ohio State, he didn't show quite the juice that he's showing. I mean, I thought of him as, a top 5 to 8 scrambling level quarterback coming out, like coming into the NFL, if that makes sense. I figured he'd be maybe a tier below, like Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, Josh Allen, even, for example. No, he's right there with those guys. He's some mix of all those guys. He has incredible speed. When he hits his top stride, he genuinely shows like 4.3-ish level speed, just burning away from entire NFL defenses and defensive backs. He also has some ball carrier moves. He can juke you, spin away from you, and he's got size too. So that shows up in his ability to break sacks and some incredible elusiveness in the pocket. Now, as a passer, I think we've seen minor strides. He continues to show really good ball placement deep down the field. I think he's playing a little bit better on time. Still a long way to go in that regard, but the mobility aspect there is at an elite level with Justin Fields, and it's really helping him put the team on his back, because we saw with Trevor Siemian what this offense looks like without him. And then he is getting some, well, I'm not going to say he's getting help, but some of these guys are stepping up as well. Let's just leave it at that. Cole Kmet's playing really well, coming down with some tough contested catches, and most notably for Kmet is he's blocking better than he ever has, even going back to Notre Dame where he was not a great blocker. So really focusing on that element of his game. You're seeing it reflected in a good run game for the Bears this year. So +2 for Cole Kmet. And then Trayvon Wesco as well. He was drafted by the Jets years ago as kind of a hybrid wingback, and just didn't work out and hasn't shown that physicality at the NFL level until now. Really fitting in well here in this Luke Getsy Shanahan system, blocking his ass off, not doing a whole lot in the receiving game, but as a blocker, definitely showing up. And then talk about blocking. These young offensive linemen, Braxton Jones continues to be such a pleasant surprise. He has not been perfect. He has had some ugly losses, but for a day 3 rookie, a late day 3 rookie, for him to step in and be a serviceable left tackle is extremely impressive. And he is a toolsy guy, so there's no reason he can't continue to refine and maybe leave the Bears in a situation where they feel like they have a franchise left tackle. I think we're still a little bit far removed from that on Braxton Jones, but he's still young and has the upside to get there. So we'll see. And then Tevin Jenkins as well. My God, he has fell in at right guard seamlessly. What a, we knew he was a good player that we thought was going to be a right tackle for them. and it just didn't work out at tackle there for whatever reason. But my God, the guard transition has been seamless for Tevin Jenkins, particularly as a run blocker, where that raw strength and tenacity that he showed at Oklahoma State, one of the most fun run blocking lineman evaluations you'll ever see, and you're seeing it here for the Bears. And then on the defensive side of the ball, really not a whole lot to speak of. I mean, they're kind of treading water there, just trying to get to the next offseason to start building some more talent there. But a couple of these young players not playing great. Armin Watts, they pick him up from Minnesota. Was kind of a surprise cut. Not kind of a surprise cut, was definitely a surprise cut by the Vikings. A guy that had some pass rush productivity for Minnesota. But they release him, and he gets brought into to Chicago here. First week or so, he showed a little bit, but since then, he's been a complete, utter liability for the run defense and just not getting any pressure at all. So he's really fallen off and doesn't seem to be a piece for them for the foreseeable future. And then let's talk about Kyler Gordon down there as well. Early second-round pick. I'm not writing off Kyler Gordon by any stretch of the imagination, but it has really been an ugly entrance to the NFL for the rookie there. He has been playing outside where I think his best projection is going to be into the slot. He is a shorter player, but he also has a real lack of long speed. You see it on him getting torched by Drake London, who is not a fast receiver down in the red zone, but he's also he's been losing a lot. He's arguably been the single worst starting perimeter cornerback in the NFL this year, and they obviously expected more from him, spending a top 40 pick on Kyler Gordon. So that has not worked out to this point. I still think he's got a good future in the slot, but right now that's just not where he's at. And then Jack Sanborn is going to go up, undrafted pickup out of Wisconsin, just showing that physicality in the run defense. Just flying around, doing what he can to help out this defense up front. A limited physical athlete, but maybe has a future as a linebacker too. And certainly since the Roquan trade, he's been their best linebacker. So he's going to go up 3 here. Now, before we get to our next team here, I want to tell you this video is brought to you by my good friends at Underdog Fantasy. For those of you that have been on social media, I'm sure you've seen the screenshots of everybody out there playing Underdog. It is all the rage right now with their pick'em contests. These pick'em contests have gotten me back into daily fantasy. It's like my favorite new thing, man. You're picking anywhere from 2 to 5 player props, and it could be anything from over-under fantasy points, receiving yards, receptions, field goals. They have rivals battles where you can pick, I think Stephon Diggs gets more receiving yards than Jamar Chase, and so on and so forth. These games have huge payouts. You can bet $2, $3 to win $20, $30, $40. You got to love that, right? They're small buy-ins with the opportunity for big money, and that means that you can increase your interest in any game. If there's a bad Thursday Night Football matchup, a bad Monday Night Football matchup, you can create a lineup, and you're going to be dialed in until the fourth quarter. That's been my favorite thing about it. So even when you lose, it doesn't even sting all that much. You're only losing $2, and you enjoyed the game a hell of a lot more. So if you want to play along with me, head over to Underdog Fantasy, and when you sign up, use promo code TFG. That is promo code TFG at sign up, and they will match up to $100 on your first deposit. Happy fantasy playing, and thank you for supporting my channel. Let's get back to it. Then we have the Detroit Lions. A big month for them. They've won 3 out of 4 here, so a lot of boosts for them, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And your star of the month there is going to be Kirby Joseph, really taking the league by storm. Anybody paying attention has noticed what Kirby Joseph has done for the Detroit Lions. The most notable game here is going to be the one against Green Bay, where he intercepted Aaron Rodgers twice, but he has come downhill. He's forced fumbles. He's been an all-around do-it-all safety. Looks like an incredible find in the 3rd round for the Lions, who have really needed an influx of talent in the secondary. And him and Trayvon Walker, not Trayvon Walker, Walker, the other safety, his first name's escaping me right now, but that could be a nice safety duo moving forward. And he's not moving up, but I will shout out Deshaun Elliott has played well as well because Walker has been hurt. But offensively, just a little bit of movement here. DeAndre Swift is going to come down. It's the vision. If you want to know like what his Madden rating is getting affected here, but that applies obviously to what we're seeing in real life. He's just not getting upfield. He's not hitting holes. And we saw some of this frustration in Hard Knocks with the running backs coach really trying to drill into DeAndre Swift like, yeah, we get it. You can bounce outside and have these explosive plays. And he certainly still has had those explosive plays this season. But it's the down-to-down consistency. He has been passed up by Jamal Williams for that reason, because Jamal Williams will put his head down and hit a hole when it's there. So that's the frustration with DeAndre Swift. I'm not going to say he's destined for a career as a third down back, but that's really how they view him right now, because trusting him to get what's there has not been reliable. But something that has been quite reliable is Amon-Ra St. Brown. Getting a +2 this week, definitely a star of the month candidate. And just what's not to say about him? His production is insane, but some of the stuff he's doing is beyond just like, oh yeah, he's getting 12 targets every week. No, like he has incredible timing with Jared Goff to find those holes in the zones. Just his general field awareness is spectacular. He has some of the best first and second step acceleration of any receiver in the league. This is something we've talked about in the past, where he's kind of a small Cooper Kupp in this offense. And it shows. Like when he catches the ball short of the sticks, he accelerates upfield so well. And it shows in his routes as well. The juice he has when he's running out routes and running crossers, where he does peel away from corners that might have better long speed. But if he's only got to run 10 yards on a crosser, he can accelerate away from those guys. So he's just impressive in so many ways. The ball skills are so consistent. And he's really emerging as a guy that needs to enter kind of that top 10 wide receiver conversation at this point, even if he doesn't do it in a lot of the ways that the typical top 10 receivers do, winning consistently vertically on the outside. Then we have the defensive side of the ball. Aleem McNeil up front, really starting to show that potential. And Lions fans might say, how is he only getting a +1? Well, I had him rated pretty well because I believe in Aleem McNeil, and I loved what I saw last year. He actually had a bit of a slow start this year, but a guy that I really like, and I think he's a genuine piece up front to be a long-term starter for them, and has just kind of made the Levi Onwuzurike pick, who just hasn't been able to stay healthy, an aftersight. And then a couple other just low-level kind of undrafted pickup types, Isaiah Buggs and Benito Jones, a couple of SEC defenders. Buggs, a little bit more of that 3-tech. He's been getting he has done a lot more than get into the lineup. He's basically been a full-time starter for them, and he's been fine. Like, that experience will help him moving forward to maybe be a part of a rotation. Nothing notable. And then Benito Jones, same deal. Like, he's actually going to get after the quarterback a little bit. He's a big-bodied dude with some power rush ability. Yeah, nothing crazy there, but those guys have been a part of the rotation, as has James Houston. Houston was a 6th-round pick. We talked about him on the podcast this week. A reminder to those of you watching on the main channel here that I do have a podcast, the Fully Inflated Football Podcast. The link to that channel for that podcast is in the description below. But yeah, James Houston came out of like Jackson State or something like that. He's an undersized edge guy. Does seem like he's put on some weight there, but he gets in for 5 snaps against the Buffalo Bills, and those are his first 5 snaps of the season. Made the most of them, to say the least. He had 2 pressures and 2 sacks on those 5 snaps. So obviously a good start to his career there, and maybe can be a part of a pass rush package plan for them moving forward. Seems to be kind of a high intensity, high effort, juiced up tweener type of a rusher. But Aiden Hutchinson is going to go up. Talked about him playing well last week. And honestly, where Hutchinson has impressed the most is just his general feel for the game. He has kind of done a lot of stuff that TJ Watt does, where he's dropping into coverage and deflecting balls, getting interceptions, those high IQ plays on screens, and like just showing that he has such a good feel for the game. His pass rush ability, his pass rush win rate. I'm not going to say it's been bad. It's been good. I think he's properly rated for that, but just his general overall game goes beyond just rushing the passer at this point, and seems to be in a good fit as a stand-up edge there, where they are able to drop him into coverage 4 or 5 times a game, and he's going to confuse some quarterbacks and make an impact in doing so. So that's a real part of being an edge rusher in a 3-4 system like this. Then we got Malcolm Rodriguez, the rookie linebacker, continues to produce and play well, and as well as Derek Barnes, who has definitely taken a step up as far as becoming a much more consistent player for them as far as playing time is concerned. But his speed to the ball is really impressive. He's got size. He's an excellent blitzer, and he honestly plays very well with Malcolm Rodriguez just as far as their skill sets are concerned, because Barnes is just kind of a run and chase big bodied guy. Rodriguez is kind of a crafty, speedy, heady player. So I like the idea of those two guys being the linebacker of their future. I would stop playing around with Alex Anzalone, who is what he is, and just go with these two guys as your starters. And then in the secondary, some movement. Jerry Jacobs is going to go up. He's kind of taken this, not kind of, he has completely taken this starting job from Amani Oruwariye. He's had his ups and downs. He's a limited physical athlete, but he is a very intense physical corner. He is rocked up 211, like 205 pounds. So he's thick. He'll get in your face, and he has definitely embraced the physicality aspect of what this Dan Campbell team wants to see, unlike Amani Oruwariye, who is an afterthought at this point. Really a train wreck season for him in a contract year. You hate to see it just for him, because he had a big year in 2021, but has lost his job when he's been out there every single week. He's been cooked. I think it was week 10, ended up having to play again and was not a good week again. A big penalty in that game. But yeah, it's looking pretty bad for Oruwariye. Was a 5th-round pick. So the league, I don't think, has a high amount of respect for Amani Oruwariye for one reason or another. Maybe he can rejuvenate his career somewhere else, but it doesn't seem like that's going to be here. And then Mike Hughes has also seen a massive increase in his playing time, and he really impressed me, especially in that Bills game. You can just see the kind of acceleration and the man coverage ability that he has. A heady player as well. This was a former first-round pick for the Minnesota Vikings. Had a good year for the Chiefs last year. Kind of a sneaky pickup for Detroit, and I'm curious to see kind of what his future could look like, because it feels like his career is just getting started for a former first-round pick. He had some off-field stuff, or maybe he was the injuries in Minnesota, but either way, feels like the beginning maybe of a nice career for Mike Hughes, who's playing well. Then we got the Green Bay Packers, kind of a tale of two halves in a lot of ways for this team. Just as far as offensively, things have been much better here in November, and defensively, things have definitely taken a turn for the worse. So that's going to start with their star of the month, Christian Watson, stealing the show for Green Bay. I mean, the speed here is incredible from Watson. When he hits that top stride speed, it's remarkable, and we saw it especially against the Philadelphia Eagles on that crossing route slant touchdown where he just catches it and outruns the entire defense. He's outrunning a defender he's out angling a defender who had 4.38 speed in the 40 time. And Darius Slay said it himself that when you are out angling defenders, that's when you have special speed. It's one thing to outrun a guy who's on the same trajectory as you. It's one thing when someone calculates a pursuit angle and you are burning them to the corner. So if you want to know what his Madden rating is now, he's up to 96 speed, and I think that is justified based on mostly that play against the Eagles, but he has shown that speed as well. And beyond that, he's made some tough catches in traffic. There's another one against the Eagles, coming over the middle of the field on a deep hitch route, about to get hit by two defenders, comes down with a tough catch. So good to see the ball skills coming together. Watson's play speaks for itself. They spent really 2 second-round picks to move up for him and had big expectations that he could be that impact for them. And you're seeing when he's healthy, he can be that. So the future is very bright, it seems, for Christian Watson. Now, let's talk about these quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers is going to come down, And, the thumb thing is what it is. It's hard to know truly how much, because Rodgers, a big part of his struggles this year have been the accuracy falling off. And it's reasonable to assume that the back-to-back MVP, one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the NFL, if not the most accurate quarterback, has suffered in the accuracy department because of a broken thumb. So that is what it is. I think next year we'll get a better feel for if it's age regression or what. But that said, he has been missing reads and making more poor reads. You see questionable interception against the Lions. You see a questionable interception against the Eagles. So that's been kind of the uncharacteristic thing of Aaron Rodgers. Now, I think a big part of that is he's pressing, knowing that his defense is getting cooked and he's not got a ton of places to go with the football this year, but those are still on him. So he's going to come down another one in what has obviously not been a great year for Aaron Rodgers. But the other quarterback here, Jordan Love, very exciting stuff against the Eagles. He comes in and was playing on time, looked comfortable, which to me is the biggest thing. When we saw him start against the Kansas City Chiefs in his first start, he came in and just looked flustered. He didn't look calm in the pocket, looked like the second he came off his first read, he was panicked. And that was just the complete opposite against the Eagles. We saw him scan the entire field, get to a check down. We saw him escape the pocket with ease and comfort. So that's huge to see. The velocity from his ball, the arm talent looks exceptional from Jordan Love. So a lot to like in a small sample size, but hard not to feel like a stock up moment for Jordan Love. And we'll see if we get to get an extended look at Jordan Love in the foreseeable future. But Aaron Jones is going to come up. He really has, I think, been his best this season. I don't know where his stats line up as far as like his career best, but just from a broken tackle perspective, being that big playmaker and being that impact in the receiving game, he gets the big touchdown down the field against the Eagles. He really has been the best offensive weapon for the Packers over the course of the season and deserves to go up for it, climbing up towards that top running back conversation. Not like top 5 or whatever, but certainly top 8-ish for Aaron Jones. But on the other hand, A.J. Dillon, I know he was better against the Philadelphia Eagles, but we just have to acknowledge that he has not been quite as explosive this year. You're definitely optimistic by what you saw in his most recent game, and perhaps that saved him from a -3 here. But you still gotta ding him. I mean, he just has not had an explosive factor. It feels like he's almost overly stubborn in driving his head downfield as opposed to keeping his head up and scanning for maybe some cutbacks and some kick out options, which I think we did see a little bit more in that Eagles game. So hopefully something has clicked for A.J. Dillon, but just has not been much of a weapon for the Packers at all throughout the course of the season, as has Sammy Watkins. That one speaks for itself. I don't even really care if he's playing hurt or what it is. That is Sammy Watkins at this point. I don't think anyone should ever expect Sammy Watkins to be able to stay healthy, and he's just not very explosive, not great hands at this point. So that one's pretty self-explanatory. That's been a disappointing signing for Green Bay, which is not a surprise to anybody. But this offensive lineman has been another huge, pleasant surprise for the Packers over the last month or so. It was not a good start for this Packers O-line, but it has really turned a corner. And not listed there is David Bakhtiari, who, knock on wood, has seemed to be able to stay out there and be healthy and play at that really high level that we know him to be able to do. But it's not just him. You've got also Elton Jenkins playing better at left guard. He's properly rated as well. But the center through the right tackle, Josh Myers, has continued to develop as a pass protector. In year 2, he looks like he's going to be a very solid center for Green Bay, even if he's not Creed Humphrey. He's a good player. And then John Runyon at right guard has been one of the better pass-protecting right guards in the league this year. He's going to be up for a contract next year. He's starting to look more and more expensive. Now, he's not the best athlete. He hasn't been a great run blocker for this system, but you got to be impressed by his technique and ability to keep the quarterback upright. And also the ability to flip over to the right side. Once they moved Elton back to left guard, he's been just as good at right guard for John Runyon. And then the right tackle, Yosh Nijman. We've talked about him several times this year. This is the 3rd episode in a row where he is going up. a toolsy 6'7" undrafted pickup out of Virginia Tech years ago. Definitely the experience, the technique coming along. At worst, a trustworthy right tackle. At best, a franchise right tackle. And just someone we got to continue to monitor to see if he can keep up what he's doing for an undrafted player. It's been really impressive. But now, the defensive side of the ball, some good, some bad. Unfortunately, the good stuff is from low-level players, and the bad stuff is from guys you're expecting big stuff from. And that starts with Kenny Clark. Just has had probably the worst year of his career. He has not helped this run defense. Now, granted, Joe Barry is not helping him. They put these D tackles in really compromising situations, staying with 2 D tackles on the field for the majority of the game, despite the team getting gashed in the run. But they do that because they think Kenny Clark is a guy that should be able to beat double teams and get off one-on-one blocks when he gets them, and he hasn't been doing that consistently enough. His pressure rate's also down as a pass rusher, so Kenny Clark, paid handsomely to be a superstar defensive tackle for Green Bay, has not been that. Let's stick with the fallers, and then we'll talk about the good stuff. Chris Barnes is going to come down. He's gotten some more opportunities with Devondre Campbell being injured, and you see Quay Walker in the notes there. Quay Walker is certainly at his ups and downs, mostly his downs as a rookie linebacker. And I criticized that pick because I felt like Chris Barnes could be a starting caliber linebacker for them as a number 2. And based on a couple starts this year, I don't know, man. That Eagles game especially was really concerning. He looked like a backup caliber guy, missing tackles, not able to get to the spot. So, he's going to come down. And then Adrian Amos has been horrible. He's had maybe his worst year, especially as a coverage player. But I don't know. I honestly think he's lost half a step back there at safety. He has just been an average guy back there, really. And he's a pending free agent. Looks like he's going to have an interesting market coming off a year like that, entering 30 years old. And then Darnell Savage as well. It's been a nightmare season for him. I do think systematically did never fit the hybrid quarters heavy high IQ safety type of role there, but they've now moved him down into the slot, and that's been a learning curve. I still think he might have a future in the league as a cornerback of some kind, whether it's outside or inside, because he is a good athlete, and I think getting more familiar with playing man coverage, which is, he's never really done that. He was a free safety at Maryland. He's been a free safety here in Green Bay. So you would expect a learning curve there, but that's basically what they've had to do with him. You see Rudy Ford going up there. He's lost that job to Rudy Ford, and now he's injured. It's just been a really bad year for Darnell Savage, the former first-round pick. But let's revisit some of these risers. Tadarius Slayton has been the TJ Slayton there, the defensive tackle. He's been the one guy on the inside that has been consistently good against the run. They need to use him more. So he's been great. Kingsley Enagbare has been a really nice pick there in the 5th round or 6th round, whenever it was. And he's just a really physical, high-effort player. He is the perfect edge 3 because he's going to come off the bench and just bring the energy. Now, he's been pushed into a starting role. He's actually played okay. He's been an adequate pass rusher, like a replacement level kind of starter there, which is good. But what he's shown in the run defense especially has been really nice. He's like one of the few guys up front that is actually noticeable in this run defense. So he definitely looks like a piece. I still don't know if he's like a long-term starter because he doesn't have a lot of get off. He doesn't have a lot of bend. You're seeing that he's not some high-end pass rusher. So I think Packers fans need to chill a little bit on the Kingsley and Enagbare hype, but definitely a good player and a good pick. Then we got Keyshawn Nixon. He getting known here for his kick return abilities, stepping in for Amari Rodgers, who's since been released. But he actually got a lot of snaps in the Eagles game. After Savage went down, he kind of filled into that slot corner position and played pretty well. And we're seeing just from his kick returns, like he has athletic tools. He's quick. He's fast. He's been in the league for 4 years now. He's only 25 years old. So just keep an eye. Maybe Keyshawn Nixon can be a player for them in the slot. I would expect if Savage is hurt, he's going to continue to play there. So they obviously like what he's bringing to the table, special teams and defense. And then we mentioned Rudy Ford. Credit where credit's due to Brian Gutekunst. He picks up Rudy Ford, gets cut from Jacksonville. Rudy Ford showed a lot of flashes for the Jaguars last year. And, he's an athlete. Just athletically speaking, he's not terribly far off of where Darnell Savage is, and that's saying a lot. But Ford seems to be able to take risks in zone coverage. And it's been up and down. The Cowboys game and the Eagles game were great in coverage. The Titans game, not so much. But he's taken the starting job. Looks like a good pickup and potentially a starting safety for Green Bay next year, where they might have two openings there with Amos and Savage in the situations they're in. And then our last team in the NFC North here, the Minnesota Vikings, star of the month, Justin Jefferson, making a strong case for Offensive Player of the Year. And we've all seen it. It's the unbelievable catches. What he did in that Bills game was one of the more dominant receiver performances you'll ever see, but continuing to do it week in, week out. For what it's worth, he now, in his first 3 seasons in the NFL, has graded per PFF over a 90. That is just absurd. I don't know if any receiver has had 3 straight seasons over a 90. I'd have to look into that. But truly special stuff from Justin Jefferson. I think the ball skills are the best thing he brings to the table, but route running, ability to separate, the run after catch ability, it's the whole package with Justin Jefferson, and making a case to be the best receiver in the NFL, along with some of these other guys this year. It's been a really big year for these top receivers. And then Kirk Cousins is going to go up as well. I know a lot of times it feels like Justin Jefferson is bailing him out, and he certainly is sometimes, but I've talked about this. Kirk Cousins under pressure has just felt like a much better, more poised, experienced quarterback for whatever reason. And he just knows where to go with the football. He'll use his legs more this year, and just taking less sacks in those big situations. And I think it's a big reason they're winning a lot of these big games. So Kirk Cousins, to me, has really surpassed like Derek Carr. We've talked about Derek Carr more in this 82, 83 range, more of that like 10 to 12-ish quarterback in the NFL. I think that's where Kirk Cousins is right now. But I am going to lower Adam Thielen. It's not that he's playing poorly. It's just that he isn't playing great and living up to that 86 grade I have on him. He has the lowest yards per route run in his career, following up what was his lowest last year. And you're not seeing a ton of explosiveness. He's still a reliable guy and a crafty dude in the slot and can win on the outside occasionally, but he just isn't that high-end weapon for the Vikings that he's been over the course of his career, really. Then you get the offensive line seeing a lot of love here. So Garrett Bradbury, I'm really glad I'm one of the few people that hadn't written him off. You remember he gets benched last year, was a former first-round pick, and I still believed in the athleticism. I felt like for a young guy, it could still get there. And the run blocking's really always kind of been there for him, but now the pass protection has been really solid. That's another big difference with Kirk Cousins, is he's not getting that same pressure right up the middle, as we are also going to see Ezra Cleveland's been playing much better at left guard after a rough start to his season. And then, of course, the blindside pressure with Christian Darrisaw playing the way he's been playing. The offensive line in general has just been so much better here in Minnesota outside of that right guard position. But even then, the last week against the Patriots, the right guard there, the LSU kid, Ingram, had his best game of the season. But he's definitely continued to struggle the majority of the year. And then even Blake Brandel, a backup tackle out of Oregon State, stepped in the last couple of weeks. Darrisaw's been concussed, unfortunately, and nothing special from Brandel, but showed that he can come in and be an adequate backup. Then onto the defensive side of things, a lot of just guys in this front four moving up. So James Lynch has had to play a lot on that D-line, and a guy that's gone up pretty much every episode of Studs and Duds this year, just playing more physical than what we've known him to be as an undersized D-end hybrid coming out of Baylor. The pass rush productivity has been non-existent from him. You would hope that you could see a little bit more of that for a guy that was such a pass rusher in college. But that hasn't really been there, but he's definitely making a lot of plays against the run. along with Kyrus Tonga. Bears fans not going to want to see this. He was a 7th-round pick in 2021. Someone that, a lot of people liked as kind of a day 3 option to be a rotational run defender. Big-bodied, physical dude out of BYU, can play nose tackle. And the Bears don't keep him on a D-line group that they desperately need help. And the Vikings end up picking him up. And honestly, he's played really well in run defense in very limited opportunities. So, he played like 30 snaps against the Cowboys, got like 7 snaps against the Patriots, but definitely looks like a piece up front. And then the veteran, Jonathan Bullard, kind of that hybrid DN type, having one of his best years as a run defender up front as well. So all these guys playing super physical for this Vikings D-line. And the pass rushers, Zadarius Smith, back to his kind of prime, honestly. The back definitely doesn't seem to be bothering him. I think he leads the NFL in pressures again. And yeah, he's a legit like defensive player of the year type of candidate this year. I think 88 is the highest we had him in Green Bay. And after some injuries have kind of plagued him, he seems to be back to that level. And what a bargain pickup for the Vikings. They have 2 really underpaid edge rushers now in Zadarius Smith and Danielle Hunter. That's a huge luxury for this team. Not to mention Justin Jefferson playing on a rookie contract. Those are premium positions. They're between Zadarius Smith, Danielle Hunter, and Justin Jefferson. They're paying those guys like $35 million total. That's like, Justin would get 30. Zadarius would probably get about 25. Danielle's probably about 20 if you had to re-sign those guys. That's an immense amount of value that those guys are bringing to the table. Patrick Peterson, +2. He's had his best year in a long time here. It really makes sense, right? It's a zone-heavy system. Peterson has had to play a lot more man coverage, going back to the end of his Arizona days, and even a little bit more with Zimmer last year. But, this is a zone-heavy system, and he's a 32-year-old corner. He's seen everything, and he still has adequate athleticism, and he can go man coverage, but you're really seeing him become more of that high-end zone corner and just play at a really high mental level, and seeing a resurgence at 32 years old is impressive for a cornerback. And then the punter, Ryan Wright, is going to go up as well, showing off a boot from the rookie punter out of, Toledo or Tulane. Next, we move forward to the NFC East, the NFC Beast this year, really. Starting with the Washington Commanders, a good month for them for sure, and really the defense coming alive in a lot of different aspects, but a big thing is Montez Sweat is playing his best football. 16 pressures and 4 sacks in his last 4 games since the last episode of Studs and Duds, where he's already been having a good year. He now has, he's 1 pressure short of setting his 2020 record of 49 pressures. So he's definitely having his best season. He's continued to be dominant against the run as well. So he's been a tone setter up front. And honestly, it takes a lot of pressure off of Chase Young that Montez Sweat is competing to look like a borderline number 1 type of edge player. So hopefully getting Chase Young back here soon. This could be a really dangerous freaking pass rush. We've been saying that about this group for a while. It hasn't felt like we've had these guys all here together playing like that. That might be just around the corner here. So Sweat starting to reach his potential. A couple pieces on the offense, however. Brian Robinson, the last couple weeks definitely showing to me real juice. I've always liked Brian Robinson as a guy that could come in and be a steady back, maybe a starter if you don't have a great starter ahead of him. But for the first time, really showing some power, vision, and acceleration through the hole. Looked like a, legit starting running back in this most recent game against the Falcons. Granted, the Falcons' front 7 is piss poor, for lack of a better term, but definitely good to see the rookie out there has basically taken this job from Antonio Gibson, who's talented in his own right. So +4 for Brian Robinson. And then had to create Armani Rogers, the project tight end. It's been very limited sample size, nothing crazy here, but he's a player we talked about during the deep dive and a little bit during draft season as a guy that was a college quarterback, learning the tight end position, following the Logan Thomas really path here in Washington and showing some flashes, getting a couple catches early on in his career. Whereas I didn't even know if he was going to make the 53-man roster. So it might be something there in Armani Rogers. And then onto the defensive side of the ball, we have Jamin Davis, their first-round pick from last season. The tackling consistency, I think, has helped inspire some confidence for him. He's shown a few more flashes in coverage. He is still very much raw and learning the position, but he's much more reliable. No doubt that he is their starter at this point, which that was a little bit of a question last year and early on in his young career, but definitely trending up slowly for Jamin Davis. Everyone develops at their own rate, and he seems to be maybe a little bit of a late bloomer. Hopefully can continue to climb here for Washington. Unlike Darrick Forrest, however, again, going up, again, one of my guys in that draft class. Loved Darrick Forrest. I kept talking about him, and everyone was like, who? Well, turns out as soon as he gets an opportunity in Washington, he looks like a legit starting safety. This guy has speed, range. He's been an incredibly consistent tackler for them in the back end, playing a little bit of free safety back there. Really fun player. I think he and Cameron Curl here are their safety duo of the future. So Curl is going to go up as well. Talk about consistent tackling. He is just legit one of the smartest safeties in the entire NFL. He's not athletically gifted, but he can play a half a step ahead in coverage. He's fine there, but where he really makes his presence felt is around the line of scrimmage. They'll bring him down to the box. He's one of the most consistent tackling safeties in the entire league. And brings that physicality you want to see down there too. So he's not just a strong safety. I think that is where he's best, covering tight ends and slot receivers when he does go to coverage, as opposed to being a rangy free safety. But that's why you got Darrick Forrest back there. So a really nice complementary safety duo that has helped this defense on the back end solidify itself. And then these corners are playing well too. So William Jackson ends up getting traded here. And a big part of that is Benjamin St-Juste has emerged as a starting caliber corner. He's taken his lumps here in his first year as a full-time starter on the outside, but definitely looks like a big, strong, smart corner. He's had his flashes, so he's going to go up for, I think, the second time this year. And then Christian Holmes as well gets his first start in this recent game against Atlanta. Looked the part. We'll see if they have anything there, if they even have to go back to him. But if nothing else, good to know you got some young depth that can step in and not get torched back there. But Kendall Fuller really stealing the show from these cornerbacks. He's been great in the last month of football. Maybe the best stretch of cornerback play from Fuller, at least in Washington. And the game-ending interception with the reaction time down by the goal line. He's been a number one for them. So that's obviously a plus. And then their kicker, Joey Sly, going to go up. He's had a really nice month of football, kicking the rock. All right, brief intermission. I just want to remind you guys, if you enjoy my analysis, do not forget I have a secondary channel for my podcast, the Fully Inflated Football Show. That's all I'm going to tell you. If you enjoy my stuff, I want to make sure you're aware that link is in the description below for the YouTube channel. Otherwise, wherever you get your audio podcasts, just search Fully Inflated Football Podcast. All right, let's move on to the Dallas Cowboys. And the star of the month, I got to sing the praise of these offensive linemen when we get the chance. And we alluded to Connor McGovern. He was in the notes category in the last episode as a guy that had started to get starts at left guard. If you remember back to last year, McGovern was not a starter, but he's an athletic, fairly high upside pick, a third-round pick out of Penn State, who people have definitely had their eye on, and last year he was playing fullback in a lot of their heavy packages, making some fun plays back there. Well, they start him off at left guard early on and really struggled. But week 7, week 8, seemed to have completely turned a corner, was locked down, didn't allow a pressure in those 2 games. Now he's continued to start weeks 9, 10, 11, and 12 now, and only that Vikings game, which would have been week 11, the Packers game, week 10, he allowed 2 pressures. But out of those 6 games that he has started in the last 6 weeks, only 2 pressures, and they came in the same game. He has been a complete anchor at left guard, and he seems to have turned a corner after a really poor start. And if that's true, Dallas may have found another star lineman, because McGovern is a good athlete out of Penn State with legit upside. This is a position that they have had success with. So definitely a name fastly ascending and someone that you should be aware of. But running behind Connor McGovern, Tony Pollard going to get his flowers here for the second studs and duds in a row. I mean, he can handle the workload, man. We've all seen Tony Pollard, the explosiveness he brings. He's averaging 5.7 yards per carry, and heading towards a free agent, contract year. Pollard looks like he's going to be worth paying that $9-10 million contract. He's running hard for it, and man, is he a weapon for Dallas. Zeke's actually had probably his best year in a long time too. He's still a fine back, and he does a lot of the dirty work. But gosh, Pollard is just so much more juiced up. You can put him out there at wide receiver. You see him torching linebackers for, what was that, like a 45-yard touchdown against the Vikings, just lined up as a receiver, something he did at Memphis. So ton of flexibility there. One of the more explosive backs in the NFL right now. Jake Ferguson as well, another one of my guys from my draft analysis, compared him to Dalton Schultz. And any Cowboys fan watching Jake Ferguson the last few weeks, I think feels pretty good with the idea of not paying Dalton Schultz and just seamlessly transitioning to Jake Ferguson as he's doing the same stuff, catching stick routes and making guys miss, getting upfield, separating in the intermediate game. So I like what we're seeing from Jake Ferguson. Not quite what Dalton Schultz has been as a blocker. So if they do decide to bring Schultz back, I think that would be the main difference. But Ferguson definitely is a mid-round pick, looking like an excellent selection from Dallas. And then another great blocker, Terrence Steele up front. He has legit been one of the most mauling, best run blocking right tackles in the entire NFL this season. He's improved to an adequate level in pass protection, so you'll definitely take that. Adequate pass pro and dominant run blocking. Then we move over to the defensive side of the ball, although I do have some notes on Dak and CeeDee Lamb have been playing much better. CeeDee, since Dak came back, playing really well. I've got CeeDee rated very highly as one of the 10 or so best receivers in the NFL, so he's starting to play at that level again, and if he continues to produce like this, he will ascend from those ranks. And then Dak, I think that Vikings game was the best Dak has looked since he hurt his ankle week 6. However, the next week against the Giants, a really bad half of football. So I want to see a little bit more consistency playing closer to that Vikings level. The game that he had against the Vikings, that level, before we raised Dak, he is at an 84 as about a top 10 quarterback. So he's rated pretty highly, but I will give Dak some credit. He's playing pretty well. These last, 3 of these last 4 quarters, he's looked dominant. Then, again, the defense, Dorrance Armstrong up front. The Cowboys released Boogie Basham this week. They feel really good about the depth they have here. Armstrong does a lot of the dirty work for this group. They'll play him with his hand in the dirt, allows them at times to put Micah Parsons back there as a off-the-ball linebacker if they want to do that. But Dorrance Armstrong has also shown some persistence to get after the quarterback. Just a really well-balanced kind of high-end number 3 edge piece for Dallas. I don't know if he's quite starting level as far as like his pass rush win rate and all that stuff, but definitely a good player in his own right. And then Micah Parsons, I mean, there's nothing really else to say about Micah Parsons. I guess what I will add is you look at everything I said about Micah Parsons after that Packers game, really questioning Dan Quinn's decision to play him in, I think, 51 out of 60 snaps at off-the-ball linebacker. He has a season-low 1 pressure in that Week 10 game against the Packers. Well, in the 2 weeks since then, he has played 5 snaps out of 84 as an off-the-ball linebacker. The rest of them as an edge player. He has just 1 coverage snap. The rest of them either run defense or pass rush. So quickly acknowledging that is not how you use Micah Parsons, letting him get back to rushing the passer. And in the last 2 weeks for Micah Parsons, a whopping 16 pressures and 4 sacks. There are those Defensive Player of the Year numbers right there. So Micah Parsons, easily one of the premium best defensive players in the entire NFL, getting a +2 this week, all the way up to a 94 in year 2, which is, again, very high territory. This is Lawrence Taylor type of stuff that we're seeing from Micah Parsons. This is only his second year really playing edge rusher. This is only his first year in his life being a full-time edge rusher for his whole season. So it is terrifying to think of what his career could look like long-term. And he's terrifying now. And then Sam Williams has been a really fun piece here. You have all these different guys. You've got Osa up front is not going to get any boost here because I like Osa, but he's been doing some stuff. You got Parsons. You got DeMarcus Lawrence, still a really good player. Dorrance Armstrong. So Sam Williams is allowed to come in as a super raw player out of Ole Miss and be used in the perfect situation for him, not just to make an impact, but to develop his own game where he can come in for 6-7 pass rush snaps a game, and he can workshop stuff. He can say, all right, I'm going to come in and set up in these next 3 snaps, set up a rip move and a cross chop, and you're starting to see him deploy some pass rush moves that he just did not use at Ole Miss. So he's getting good coaching, and he's getting a perfect opportunity to really experiment with it, and he's producing. He's getting after the quarterback. He's had a few sacks. So Sam Williams, a super athletic project type that they took in the second round, and he's going to have some time to potentially develop into DeMarcus Lawrence's replacement. And then in the secondary, Deron Bland, not too much to say here, but a young player getting some reps in the slot has been replacement level there, so going to get some acknowledgement. And then lastly, the kicker, Brett Maher. Man, was it that Vikings game? I think he made 3 50-plus yard field goals. He's been one of the best kickers in the NFL this year, getting his flowers here, up to a 79. Okay, the Philadelphia Eagles, their star of the month is going to be Jalen Hurts. Just good to see a continuation of his success. Hasn't had the most dynamic passing performances the last few weeks, and even his efficiency hasn't been quite what it was to start the year, but he's still been a really good quarterback. We saw in that Packers game him avoid mistakes and show how much he can really hurt you with his feet. He just continues to impress. He's a legitimate MVP candidate. Now, the reason he's not going to win MVP most likely is because you can look at the Eagles and say, well, you got A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith. He's had Dallas Goedert, the best offensive line in the NFL. Like, yeah, as far as a value proposition, he's not doing what Patrick Mahomes is doing. So a lot of Eagles fans think Jalen Hurts isn't getting his respect. And some people might look at that 80 and say he's playing above that. Yeah, that's true. But again, these are more long-term, full-scope ratings here. As long as he keeps playing well, he will continue to climb. But it's not all going to happen in 1 year just by the way that we do this. So +2 for Jalen Hurts, the star of the month for the Eagles. And I'm really excited to see if he can carry this into the playoffs, because that is definitely the expectation for this Eagles team, is to get to the Super Bowl and win one, really, with the roster that they have constructed here. Especially when Hurts is entering the final year of his contract next year, they do want to maximize on that rookie deal. Okay, then for the rest of the offensive pieces here, Miles Sanders has had really some of his best games lately. You know, he's had highly productive games in the past. A lot of those are just completely clean blocked lanes where he's able to use that speed, and he's never been a bad back. But the last couple weeks, his broken tackle percentage is way up. He's actually creating stuff on his own, and that is a next evolution in Miles Sanders' game. So whether that's coming with more reps or added confidence, I don't care. All I know is he is running the ball better than he has ever in his career. And then Quez Watkins as well. He has really emerged as a legitimate weapon for this Eagles passing game. He plays his role as that vertical extender to keep the defense honest. He has had some nice catches over the middle of the field, showing off that speed and separation ability. But even in the Packers game, connecting on a tough back shoulder timing route with Jalen Hurts for a touchdown. So or maybe he was just short of the touchdown. But either way, Quez as a wide receiver 3 and a perimeter kind of Y receiver is the perfect fit with A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith and Dallas Goedert and Miles Sanders and this offensive line and Jalen Hurts. This team is just stupid stacked right now. On the offensive line, Lane Johnson playing some of his best football in his career, and that is saying something given he has had an excellent career And just good for him, man. I know he's had some off-field trauma that impacted his play. He's dealt with injuries, but he has not missed a snap this year. He has been a rock at right tackle. But also Jason Kelce looks rejuvenized with the winning football here. He has always been a dominant run blocker. He's been a little bit more up and down as a pass protector throughout his career. But man, he has not given up a whole lot on the interior there. So Jason Kelce, another veteran here, he doesn't seem to be slowing down. And his brother, obviously, Travis Kelce, not slowing down. Those guys, you would think at this age, they would be starting to think a little bit about the back nine. And no, like Jason Kelce, I think, came back on a 1-year deal. I wouldn't be surprised if he signs a 2 or 3 year extension to really, draw this thing out, because he's still playing at a super high level. And we've seen these linemen be able to do that into their 30s. So both Lane Johnson and Jason Kelce have been fantastic. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, it's been a little bit more up and down the last few weeks. It really has. So they go out and they get Robert Quinn. It was really inefficient for the Bears before the Eagles traded for him, and has been inefficient since they traded for him. Now, he's been a little bit better getting after the quarterback in Philadelphia on a per-snap basis, because he really only has to come in for 5 to 10 snaps a game, and they can keep him fresh. But he just doesn't have an element of power right now. It doesn't seem to have the juice that he had last year. He just has not been the same player. So the Bears getting rid of him was definitely a win. And honestly, I don't know if the Eagles really need him or needed to make this trade. He's kind of playing at a replacement level now, as we saw with like Von Miller last year. Robert Quinn is not Von Miller, but maybe that extra incentive to get a Super Bowl will turn something on for Robert Quinn late, but not any strong indications that that's going to happen. And then Fletcher Cox as well. He has definitely been declining the last few years, and you've seen his pressure rate come down. You've seen him not be the dominant run defender that he once was, and having to really step up and be this team's number 1 defensive tackle without Jordan Davis out there, asking him to eat blocks and defend the run a lot better. You've seen this run defense really struggle, and his pass rush win rate is really low. His pressure rate really low. He had a really rough stretch, and he came out, the first month of the year was really not bad. He ended up with about 13 pressures. I'm just kind of eyeballing this. 13 pressures on about 100 snaps. So you're looking at, first month of the year, he has about a 13% pass rush percentage there, at least a pressure percentage. But you look at his last 2 months, and he only has 13 pressures in twice that amount of time. So looking at 6% pressure rate, not helping this run defense. It is just not really looking good for Fletcher Cox. It's reasonable to look at the difference between the first month and the back end of the season there, because he is such an old player, 32 years old, maybe fatiguing. He's playing so many snaps here. I mean, he had 70 snaps against Washington. That's just a crazy amount, and didn't have a single pressure in that game. So it really is just not looking good for Fletcher Cox right now. And he's going to go down all the way to an 80 there. And even then, that's a little generous based on, maybe the first month of the season and what he's accomplished in his career. But Milton Williams has played well. He's had to play more against the run with some of these injuries they've had, and he's held his own. He's an undersized guy, but he's quick, and he's getting defensive stops every week. A younger, ascending defensive lineman here who I think Eagles fans are really excited for his future, even if he's buried behind a lot of veterans right now. And then Kaiser White is also going to come down. He's been a part of the reason this run defense has struggled over the last month. He just has been getting beat more in coverage as well than he did in his last year for the Chargers. So it's not that he's been terrible, but he has not been the legit good linebacker that he was for the Chargers last year. And then the safety, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, is going to go up to much closer to how we viewed him coming over from New Orleans. And he has made this position change to a true safety position. It was not pretty early on, but now the league leader in interceptions. Granted, a chunk of those have landed right in his lap. Some interceptions he doesn't really get full credit for, but his overall game has solidified back there. He's tackling better. He's been more rangy. He's been disrupting plays much better. So Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, we know he's a talented player, just like we said when we lowered him several weeks ago, that or several months ago at this point, that it just might take some time to learn the new position and get back to how we view him. And it seems that has happened. So good on Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and I think his upside at safety is higher than it was in the position that the Saints had him in as kind of a dime slot hybrid corner type piece. And then another safety here, Reed Blankenship, was not existent on the roster, so we had to create him. He got the interception on Aaron Rodgers, coming in as a backup, undrafted free agent out of Middle Tennessee State. Nice play to read the eyes of the quarterback and break on the ball. So we'll keep an eye if he gets more playing time and what there might be to see there. But let's wrap up the NFC East with the New York Giants. And the star of the month is none other than Dexter Lawrence, who is really making a case to be, honestly, I would just say a top 3 interior defensive lineman in the NFL. There's a lot of guys trying to vie for that position right now, with Donald descending, Chris Jones playing great. You've got Simmons and, a lot of guys that you could mention in this conversation. But Dexter Lawrence has, I would say, been the most complete package out of any defensive tackle as far as being a top run defender and a top pass rusher. So that's about as much as you can ask for a nose tackle, to be a dominant run defender and still be one of the better pass rushers in the league. He's been one of the main pieces why this Giants defense has been able to achieve what they're doing, because he demands so much attention up front in this attacking, blitz-heavy defense. It's so much easier to design stunts and pressures around a guy like Dexter Lawrence, who you know that O-lines are going to consistently set their rules to shade towards him. So, yeah, he just has a gravitational pull effect as a pass rusher, and has been a dominant run defender as well. So Dexter Lawrence, a huge season. The former first-round pick, who myself and many people question the upside of, the concept of a really good nose tackle being worth a first-round pick has really taken a U-turn in the last couple years. When Lawrence was drafted, it was a space league. It still is a space league, but the whole league was trending towards get big bodies off the field and play off coverage, quarters defense. Well, now we're seeing a shift, a pivot back towards more physical football, and finding guys like Dexter Lawrence is very difficult. I kind of talked about this in the draft season last year, where there is a market deficiency now at this defensive tackle position. So I really think Dexter Lawrence has become one of the most underrated, undervalued players in the league, and he's going to have a contract looming here soon as well. Should be a pretty big number for him. And then let's get into a large list of changes for the Giants with these playmakers. So a lot of movement for the receivers. Kenny Golladay is going to come down again. We lowered him after the first month, failing to produce, failing to get on the field. And this has been another go at it where he's gotten another opportunity to get playing time, getting fully benched, injured for a little bit, and then put back out there because all these guys have been hurt. Shepard's hurt. Wandale's hurt. They've had to play Kenny Golladay, and his yards per route run is a straight-up embarrassment, towards the bottom of the league at a half yard per route run. It's real bad. If you're not familiar with that stat, just to put it into some context, Justin Jefferson, obviously one of the best, is about 6 times that at 2.8 yards per route run. So just a terrible ability to make any sort of impact on this offense. And he's had 2 drops, too, when he has had the ball thrown his way. So I can't explain why Kenny Golladay has become this bad. It must be on him at this point. He must be checked out. He must be out of shape. Mentally just not dialed in. It's been an embarrassment for Golladay since he signed that massive contract over from Detroit. And what a bullet that the Detroit Lions dodged by letting him go, getting a 3rd-round compensatory pick for him. that I think they may have used on Kirby Joseph. So that's a pretty freaking great flip right there. But Darius Slayton has really stepped up. Talk about another receiver that was really counted out. The Giants organization, I heard from a source in the league that they thought Slayton was done. They really wanted to cut him. I think he flashed enough that they kept him as like a 6th wide receiver, and he's the guy that has taken the opportunity. You would think a guy like Kenny Golladay would rise to the occasion, and Darius Slayton has. He's been an impact at all 3 levels, short, intermediate, and deep, showing what he showed as a rookie coming into the league. Ball skills down the field, verticality, good release off the line of scrimmage. He is a legit Y on the outside, and is going to be a piece, in my opinion, for the Giants moving forward. If not, someone that a team would be smart to make him a starter as a Y for your team. And then a bunch of these different receivers going up. Richie James has stepped up in minor opportunities, touchdowns the last couple weeks. Isaiah Hodgins, I want to talk about him more. I loved Isaiah Hodgins coming out of Oregon State. I kind of very hesitantly compared him to Adam Thielen, who of course was an undrafted free agent, a guy that wasn't particularly fast. Not that I said he would become Adam Thielen, but I saw similar craftiness and incredible ball skills from Isaiah Hodgins, and just hands consistency from Isaiah Hodgins as far as not dropping the ball. And we've seen that now, him finally getting an opportunity. So Hodgins was drafted in the 6th round by the Buffalo Bills. I think I had a 2nd to a 3rd round grade on Isaiah Hodgins. So I thought that was a steal. Obviously, he ends up getting buried behind all those receivers with Brian Daboll, his new head coach, there in Buffalo with him. Just never got that chance. But early this year, Isaiah Hodgins actually got a game for the Buffalo Bills, produced. Ends up getting cut for some reason. And then the Giants pick him up, Brian Daboll familiar with him, and he has been a legit piece. He's getting a few catches every week. He's been a reliable option for them. I like Isaiah Hodgins. I think he can fall into some role as maybe a 4th wide receiver, maybe even a starter as a big-bodied 3rd option like an Allen Lazard type of guy. In fact, I think Hodgins is probably currently better than a guy like Allen Lazard because his hands are better. But as far as the lack of speed, very similar. But I do like Isaiah Hodgins. And in an offense like this that can find creative ways to get a guy like him open where that is not his strong suit, he can have a legit role, as we're seeing. Wandale's also going to go up. He played well. He earned this, but this is also a tribute to the fact that he got hurt, which is super unfortunate. His last game was fantastic. Gets over 100 yards. Just a bummer that he's not going to get a chance to continue to show what he did in that game. We're going to have to wait till next season to see him hopefully ascend further. Both these tight ends are going to continue to go up. Tanner Hudson for the 2nd time this year going up. Chris Myarick, who's been a really good blocker. They rotate these guys around. Preferably they can get Daniel Bellinger back out there very soon. But these guys have shown that they can be decent role players as tight ends, decent blockers, decent hands. You know it. And then on the offensive line, Andrew Thomas continues to dominate at left tackle. Really saw his first hiccup against Micah Parsons, which is excusable. He has really been locked down, been maybe the best left tackle in the entire league this season. And then at right tackle, Evan Neal's been hurt over the last couple of really 6 weeks it's been since we saw Evan Neal. Tyree Phillips has been the guy they called upon, former 3rd round pick for the Baltimore Ravens, kind of a bruising guy that's played some guard for Baltimore. He's been fine. He hasn't been anything special, but he's been better than what he did in Baltimore and has been an adequate pass protector. So good to know you got a decent backup there. Similar body type to Evan Neal, big, strong guy on the right side of the line there. And then on the defense, Kayvon Thibodeau coming off of, honestly, it felt like a breakout performance against the Dallas Cowboys, the most watched game of the year from a viewership perspective. But 9 pressures in that game against the rookie there for Dallas, Tyler Smith. And yeah, he was my edge 1 for a reason. And we praised Aiden Hutchinson earlier on. And Hutchinson is still maybe a little bit more polished, all-around game a little bit better, but Thibodeau's raw pass rushing ability is just more explosive and is a higher upside player. To me, I said Kayvon, we talk about Trayvon Walker the way we should talk about Kayvon Thibodeau in this draft, and I praised this pick. Great to see him really flash really high upside. I mean, a 9 pressure performance is about as elite as it gets. So great to see from Kayvon Thibodeau, who's been playing really well lately. Jihad Ward deserves some praise. He's not efficient as a rusher. He's not a flashy player, but he's played like 1,200 snaps for 3 different teams in the last 3 years. He's a physical, big-bodied guy. He thumps. He throws his body around. He's always available. He's just a decent depth piece to have on a D-line, and I can see why Wink Martindale, who's familiar with Ward from Baltimore, wanted to bring him in and get him in the locker room. And then Micah McFadden, the linebacker, the rookie, has been starting now over Tay Crowder, who has been one of the most just weird starters in the league. Tay Crowder, he's been one of the worst starters in the league for a couple of years. They finally found a guy that's at least serviceable at linebacker, unlike Tay Crowder. And McFadden has not been good in coverage. He's been a little bit all over the place, but he's playing a lot. He's showing exactly what he did at Indiana, where he is just a phenomenal blitzer, just gets after the quarterback with his hair on fire. And that's been an asset for them, but he's been tackling well. He's been fine. So he's going to go up 2, along with the rookie Cordale Flott, who's been playing much more these last couple of weeks. He's been banged up himself, but he's been fine. Nothing crazy, but getting that experience. Young kid out of LSU. And then got to love what you saw from Rodarius Williams against the Dallas Cowboys. Now just complete transparency, a player that I missed on... I didn't miss on him in the draft. I liked Rodarius Williams. I missed on him in the fall roster edits. I would have probably had him closer to like a 68 if I noticed he was as low as a 64. So that's a thanks EA moment there. EA Sports missing on Rodarius Williams, but loved his zone instincts at Oklahoma State. Thought he would have been a fun player to take a flyer on late in the draft, and he gets a start against Dallas and has a great game. Getting his hand on a couple passing lanes, disrupting them with those zone eyes, even intercepts Dak Prescott. Did get flagged for a holding call in a man coverage situation on CeeDee Lamb, which is not how you want to use Rodarius Williams. Think off coverage, zone feel. It's good to know that is translating to the NFL. Granted, he's not really in a scheme that's going to maximize those things with Wink Martindale's blitz-heavy, man-heavy system. But just someone to keep an eye on if he ends up as a backup, maybe in one of these zone-heavy systems. Could be really nice depth. And, I compared him to someone like a Rasul Douglas. So, +5 for Rodarius Williams. And then Julian Love has been so steady back there. The playmaking hasn't been exceptional back there, but he's also not getting beat either. And he's just been really consistent coming downhill and tackling. He's a big part of why this defense is so consistent. When you have a safety that's not missing tackles, those 5-10-yard completions aren't turning into 15-20-yard completions or big touchdowns. So Julian Love's been really consistent for them. Still kind of learning the safety position, a guy that was a corner coming out of Notre Dame who I really liked. So fun to see him producing. This Giants team, even though Giants fans think I hate them, they really are full of a lot of my guys. If you look back at this thing with guys like Isaiah Hodgins, Andrew Thomas, Julian Love, Rodarius Williams, Kayvon Thibodeau. So it's fun to see these guys really succeed. And then our next conference is the NFC South. So we're going to start with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and actually for the second month in a row, the star of the month, a no-name offensive lineman. It just has not been a season full of exciting emergences for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But one of those exciting emergences is at their most desperate position at left guard. Nick Leverett coming out of literally nowhere and has been very much a starting caliber left guard for them. It has been an absolute godsend there. Is some of that Tom Brady's ability to get the ball out quick, protecting a guy like him? Yeah, probably. But his one-on-one rate is very good. And again, for the second month in a row, Nick Leverett making a name for himself there at left guard for the BUCS. Tom Brady is going to come down. The efficiency just not quite there. But more specifically, if you watch the film on the Browns game, missing throws, and he just hasn't been able to get on the same page with these receivers. And there have been more overthrows to guys, especially like Mike Evans this year. But yeah, nothing crazy here for Tom Brady. I still think the physical tools are there. I still think he would benefit from better play calling, better protection, better receiver play. We're going to see some of these guys coming down too. It's not just Tom Brady's fault, but I think he's part of the picture here. Then with the running back, Rachaad White is going to go up for the second studs and duds in a row. A couple of big weeks in a row. No Leonard Fournette in this most recent week against the Browns, and didn't really change anything with their run game. If anything, they were more productive on the ground. Granted, the Browns' interior run defense is no good, but yeah, Rachaad White was a good prospect coming out. They spent a third-round pick on him, and he's paying early dividends in his rookie season. Now, I will say, one of the bigger reasons the BUCS offense lacks that explosiveness is the receivers that this offense has become synonymous with, going back to even having Gronk and Antonio Brown as well. But Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, of course, these guys just have not been their regular superstar selves. Mike Evans especially just hasn't shown a whole lot of separation. He hasn't been winning a ton of tough catches. There's been flashes for sure, but also mentally just not there all the time with Tom Brady. You see the big drop in that Panthers game that should have been a touchdown. He really just has not been a number one wide receiver for this offense, and it's been hurting the team. Now, Chris Godwin, on the other hand, he is going to come down. He just hasn't been as explosive. He's still getting a lot of catches. He's still producing. He's still a very good player, don't get me wrong. But I do think we're not seeing quite the same juice that we've seen from him in the past, perhaps not back fully healthy. Hopefully he can regain some of that explosiveness, and we can see that rack monster, that physically dominant guy over the middle of the field, that right now there's flashes of that, but honestly not even like high-end flashes. He's just been a consistently good player, not that great player that we know Chris Godwin can be. Then these tight ends are also going to go up. Cade Otton in limited opportunities looks like a rookie ready to contribute. He's not the guy that they fully seem to trust, but in moments he has made plays. And then Kieft as well has made plays. The 7th-round rookie out of Minnesota. They like him because he seems to be their best blocking tight end. This is a team that still wants to try and run the ball from under center, and Kieft has been the guy in that tight end room that has been willing and able to do that. Now, Tristan Wirfs certainly could have been a Star of the Month candidate. Either of those linemen deserve the praise. Tristan Wirfs has, I think, taken the notion that Andrew Thomas is the best tackle from that class personally. And this is, I think, going to become a very fun, I guess, rivalry, at least in the media. I don't think these guys really care, in all honesty, but both these guys looking like two of the best tackles in the NFL. Tristan Wirfs has been unbelievable. He's allowed one pressure since, I think, week 4. Let's confirm that real quick.
3 hours later.
Yeah, he gave up one pressure against the Browns last week. That was his first pressure since week 3 against Green Bay. He has literally been deleting dudes in pass protections. So that's another evolution in his game. He's always been a good pass protector, but this is the best he's ever graded out there. And +2 for Tristan Wirfs, I believe my highest graded right tackle at this point in time, even after we just praised Lane Johnson there, who's also having a great season. And then just one more piece on the offense, Robert Hainsey, who just continues to play as a solid starting center. He's not normally the guy they feel pressure from. And yeah, he's been just solid, moving on up. And honestly, defensively, nobody moving. It's a lot of veterans that are just kind of hanging around, not playing bad enough to warrant reductions, but certainly not gaining any traction. And yeah, all offense moving up for the BUCS. Some up, some down. Now we have the Atlanta Falcons, and this is an interesting team because they have so many different bodies that they're trying to figure out who can be a piece for this team. And one guy that's been there is Chris Lindstrom, who is the star of the month here. And if you guys are filling out Pro Bowl ballots and you are not putting Chris Lindstrom's name down for guard, shame on you. He has probably been the best guard in the entire NFL this season. That's ahead of Zach Martin, ahead of Quentin Nelson. Watch the Falcons the next time they're on. Just watch Chris Lindstrom, because it seems like every 4 or 5 snaps, he has incredible impact blocks. A lot of times it's reach blocks on these outside zones, but he's been sound in pass protection as well. He has seriously been most likely the best guard in the NFL, and hopefully we don't see this as an A.J. Terrell situation from last year, where a superstar on this team does not get the credit they deserve. And then also on the offense, Marcus Mariota, going to give him just a little bit of respect, doing a better job lately, taking better care of the football. It's not that I've been overly impressed by Marcus Mariota. He certainly hasn't been incredibly accurate either, but he has been using his feet well, making this a functional offense. Just deserves some respect here, nothing crazy. Both these young running backs are going to get some more love, both Caleb Huntley and Tyler Algier. You know, Huntley actually passes the eye test as someone that should probably at least be getting some more carries there. He has a really fast first step. His juice to the corner and through the holes is exceptional. Now, that tops out very quickly. He doesn't have great long speed, but for such a big guy, it is noticeable when you see a guy who gets 0 to 60 so quickly. And he does bring some physicality at the point of attack. But it has been Tyler Algier of these backups that has gotten the majority of the workload here. He was drafted this year out of BYU, was one of my favorite backs in this class. Incredibly physical dude, tough guy, reminded me a ton of Jamal Williams coming out of BYU, and I think he's showing that here in Atlanta and seems to be at worst a really good backup running back. Not sure if he has like starter upside, would probably argue he does not, because he's not the best athlete in the world. But clearly, the NFL game, not too much for him. He's been effective in his own right. And then both these tight ends have played well with Kyle Pitts out for what it's worth. And Michael Pruitt, as long as he's playing in a Shanahan system, and typically as long as he's coached by Arthur Smith, he's a productive, sneaky good player. And I say sneaky because he literally does sneak out on a lot of these play actions. He does enough as a blocker. He is not a poor blocker. So you have to keep honest with him when he's in there, but it does feel like he is a specialist at crossing routes, kind of a poor man's Jonnu Smith, and sneaking out on play action, but he is a legit athlete, and he's been consistent for this team, and that's kind of what Arthur Smith loves, is guys that get lost in the mess, but can produce if schemed open. And then Parker Hess, on the other hand, he is a blocking specialist, but we noticed him last year really mauling dudes in the trenches. They love him for 12 personnel, and he continues to do his job there, as does Caleb McGarry, who's been one of the breakout linemen of the season. He's always just been kind of an adequate, measly starter. What's crazy is he never really showed these flashes to me as this nasty run blocker, and he has honestly been deleting dudes in the run game, showing some athleticism to get on the move and clear spaces out wide. And another guy to watch, you know, him and Chris Lindstrom working together has been a thing of beauty this year. So he's due for a big contract with how he's playing. He's been pretty good in pass protection as well. So yeah, like I said, a breakout star. Well, I don't want to say star, but a breakout stud we'll go with in studs and duds here for the Falcons. And then Drew Dahlman also, continues to play solid. It was a surprise when he beat out Hennessy for that starting center position, but kind of proving out why. He's just been solid. Nothing amazing there. Been better as a run blocker than in pass protection, but learning along the way. A young second-year center out of Stanford. Then on the defensive side of the ball, Taquan Graham continues to just be a really good defensive tackle for them. Hasn't done much as a pass rusher, but he's been one of the few guys up front that you notice getting into the backfield, getting defensive stops. Really quick dude, able to get off blocks from that 3-tech spot. And unfortunately, he did get hurt. I saw him getting carted off in that Bears game, so hopefully he's okay. He was one of my guys coming out, and it's been fun to see him really emerge over a guy like Marlon Davidson, who I haven't even seen. He must be hurt or just benched entirely. But Taquan Graham, not an unfamiliar or dissimilar, I think is the word I'm looking for, a dissimilar athlete to a guy like Davidson, who they spent much higher draft capital on. Graham, the guy, the 5th round pick, is the one they're getting that play out of. And then Timmy Horn, he is an undrafted rookie, I believe, and he's playing a lot of nose for them, doing some good run defense stuff up front, so someone to keep an eye on there in a very thin D-line group. He has emerged. And then at linebacker, Michael Walker is going to go up 1. Has made a ton of good plays in coverage this year. He's a very streaky player, but he's one of those linebackers that as long as he's making flashes, you'll take that, especially for a guy that projects as a number 2 linebacker. I don't think anyone thinks Michael Walker is going to be your alpha. That's why you're hoping Anderson can continue to play well. Troy Anderson, he went up in last month's studs and duds, not quite playing consistent enough to get that boost here this week, but someone we definitely have our eye on. But yeah, Michael Walker is an LB2. If he has some bad weeks, but then has some good weeks where he's baiting quarterbacks and getting interceptions, just as he did this most recent week against Taylor Heineke, you'll take that as an LB2. And then on the back end, Richie Grant, their 2nd round pick from last year, playing great back there. So good to see that. Was not a great start for him. Someone they drafted to hopefully give them an impact right out the gate, and he is doing that. And then Young Ho Koo is going to drop down 1 as well. A highly regarded kicker, has missed a few of these last few weeks and is going to have to get dinged for it. All right, the Carolina Panthers have had an up and down month, some ugly losses, some nice wins, but Donta Foreman has been a consistent force and their star of the month. His production speaks for itself, but he's shown to be actually a better fit, I think, for their run game. Just a more powerful runner between the tackles than Christian McCaffrey. He's not a better running back than Christian McCaffrey is overall, but for an offense that needs more of that workhorse that can stay healthy, stay physical from start to finish, he has been an excellent find, and I'm curious to see if they're able to retain him into next season, because he really is a good fit for everything they've got going on here. Seems to have learned a thing or two from Derrick Henry in Tennessee last year. But also on offense, Baker Mayfield's going to have to come down. Obviously the ugly start, but gets back out there and just more of the same. Witnessed him back to his old tendencies of rolling into traffic, walking himself into pressure, always to the right side there. Hasn't been explosive down the field, hasn't been a good decision maker, just has been a poor quarterback straight up this year. And we've seen other quarterbacks come in and have some success here, right? The offensive line actually is not a problem here. Terrace Marshall's been playing well, as you're going to see there. He's going up 1. DJ Moore is there. Like, they have pieces here. It's not an impossible situation. Now, the coaching's not great, but I do think Baker has entered this kind of situation where, like a Marcus Mariota or a Teddy Bridgewater, an Andy Dalton, he's going to have to take a backup job, wait on a chance to, sit and learn, and then step in and show that he's learned some stuff before he is looked at as a starter again. Then Terrace Marshall, we mentioned, playing well. Ian Thomas making a couple nice catches these last couple weeks. Nothing overly exciting from those guys, but they're playing well. But what is exciting to me is this offensive line. We've got 4 out of their 5 starters going up. And for Ekwonu, Brady Christensen, 2 guys drafted in the last couple years. Both guys have been so steady this year. Ekwonu had a rough start, but ever since about week 3, he's legit been a high-end pass-protecting left tackle. What's weird is he's actually not been as consistent as a run blocker up front, which was kind of the reverse bill on him. But honestly, I think you'll take that, because with his physical tools and what we saw at NC State, the run blocking consistency will come. He'll learn how to latch and consistently drive guys. The pass protecting, I think, is what's a little bit harder, especially for a guy like him. So that's, I think, best case scenario in a lot of ways. So Ekwonu's going up. Brady Christensen, I think, is just a very solid, fine left guard. It makes sense. Super polished, older prospect coming out of BYU, was an almost flawless pass protector there. Not the biggest guy, not the strongest guy, a decent athlete. And I think as a weakest link, he's totally fine. Bradley Bozeman has won this starting center job back. We talked about this group on the podcast this week, so this might be redundant for those of you that do follow the Fully Inflated Football Show. But I did get some clarity from the YouTube comments on how this all played out. So they signed Bozeman to a big deal, and Matt Rule and the staff actually really liked Pat Elflein. Bozeman was a little bit banged up, was practicing partially, and they kind of just liked what they saw from Elflein, so they just started Pat Elflein, even though they gave Bradley Bozeman a decent contract. Well, turns out Elflein is still Pat Elflein, and Bradley Bozeman, they paid him for a reason. So he comes back in and has played some of his best football. Seems to be mad that he wasn't starting from the beginning. He has been rocked up in pass protection and playing really well. Not listed here is going to be the right guard, Austin Corbett, who is playing well and up to his pay grade, but then also Taylor Moton is maybe playing the best football of his career. He is one of the top echelon right tackles in the NFL as well. Not quite in that Tristan Wirfs, Lane Johnson, Ryan Ramczyk tier, but maybe a cut below that in the top 5 or 6 guys. But then over to the defensive side of the ball, this pass rush has woken up a little bit these last few weeks. It's going to start with Yetur Gross-Matos. I mean, it's nothing incredible, and he's gotten a lot of opportunities with a lot of snaps, but he does have 13 pressures and a sack over the last 3 weeks. That's very solid. It's commendable. He's stayed persistent with this. He's getting a ton of playing time. He's already got almost 600 snaps on the season. You probably wished for a lot more from the former second-round pick here in year 3. But, you know, not everybody develops at the same rate, as we said earlier, and it's much better than he was producing in the start of the season. In fact, from weeks 1 through 9, he only had 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pressures in the first 9 weeks of the season. So he's already surpassed that in just the last 3 games. Is he turning a corner? I don't know. Probably not, but we'll see, I guess. Now, Marquise Haynes is definitely a much more explosive pass rusher. He doesn't have to do nearly the dirty work that Yetur Gross-Matos does. Matos has almost 4 times the amount of run defense snaps, but Marquise Haynes, 2 of the last 3 weeks, has had really explosive pass rush performances. Has 4 pressures, 2 sacks against the Falcons, gets 3 pressures and a sack against Denver last week, and he's shown these flashes over the last 20 games of his career or so. He's a nice rotational piece and a helpful player for that defense. And then Brian Burns has really been on pace for his best season at this point. I know the 2020 season, he had some really dominant wins in there. But right now he has tied his career record for sacks at 10. He has 53 pressures at the moment, coming off a dominant game against Denver with some really impressive work on the right side of Denver's line there. But yeah, he's on pace to surpass his career record for pressures and sacks. So good to see that from Brian Burns, who did take a little bit of a step back last year. I'm very happy for Carolina that they did not trade him, trade DJ Moore. Things have been pretty good with Brian Burns, with DJ Moore, with the team. You're happy to have those guys in-house. And Frankie Louvu continues to just be so fun. And honestly, the last couple of weeks, he's shown even more as like a true off-ball linebacker. He's had flashes there as well. He's had good pass coverage plays earlier in the season. A big interception comes to mind. But just the run defense has been really consistent from him. He is a legit do-it-all starting caliber linebacker. They've really found something there. And also, Corey Littleton has played a nice rotational role. This tends to happen quite a bit in the NFL. Guys break out, they get huge contracts, and they don't live up to those contracts. This is Corey Littleton we're talking about. The Raiders paid him an assload of money, and he really regressed back to being a poor linebacker, or just became a poor linebacker. But he gets cut from the Raiders, has to kind of re-earn it and reset to his old work behaviors, and he's becoming a good functional coverage linebacker again here in Carolina. And then into the secondary, we do have a note on J.C. Horn. He's just been really up and down. He's had a lot of flashes this year, which he's definitely capable of, but 6 penalties this year, many of them coming in the last few weeks, just a little bit too grabby for my liking, and that was the beat on him coming out of college. So I've got him rated as a 78 right now. That's very respectable. Maybe 77, 78. That's a respectable rating for a player basically in his rookie season who's had ups and downs. But just, want to see a little bit more consistency from him before he gets a boost. But it's been mostly good for him. And then Keith Taylor is going to come up. He's gotten a start in there. He's been played in certain dime packages because they just like him as a matchup corner. He's got that length and physicality they look for. And he's done basically well in whatever role they ask of him. Those Washington Huskies are very sound at defensive back. All right, our last team in the NFC South, the New Orleans Saints. Star of the month is kind of their own version of Frankie Louvu in a lot of ways, although Caden Ellis, I think, is a much more smooth athlete with more upside. And it might sound silly, but this guy's been a superstar defender for them the last 4 weeks, and it's been in all 4 phases. He has 5 sacks as a blitzer, taken from what Demario Davis has always done so well there. They are a great blitzing team there, but he has been legit one of the best run-defending linebackers in the NFL in the month of November. He's been a secure tackler. He's not gotten lost in coverage. They don't really ask him to do too much in coverage, but this is a player who might not have the best long speed, but he's really big, 6'2", 240 pounds, and he moves really, really well. And it reminds me a lot of these guys. Feels like they all come out of Idaho, Wyoming, and Idaho State or whatever. This year Chad Muma comes out. You have another guy that comes to my mind is the Bengals linebacker. Names escape. Logan Wilson. He kind of reminds me a lot of those guys. So this is a team that knows a thing or two about linebackers. And with Demario Davis at his age, Caden Ellis is bursting onto the scene. It's been a small sample size for a guy that's really coming out of nowhere. But I think Saints fans are pretty excited by what they're seeing about Caden Ellis. We got a question about him in the mailbag this week as well. And yeah, I see it. He's been killing it. But onto the offense, Andy Dalton does continue to play well. Now, you might look at the box score and some of these stat sheets and say, well, yeah, but he got shut out and he had those pick sixes against the Cardinals. When you really watch the games, Andy Dalton has legit played well. And people make fun of PFF grades all the time. Andy Dalton is grading out as like a top 7 quarterback in the NFL right now. And no one at PFF would tell you that he is a top 7 quarterback in the NFL, but from a performance standpoint, he is making big-time throws every week, sometimes to Rashid Shaheed, Chris Olave. He's taking care of the football despite the fact that this offensive line has played quite poorly. He's been using his feet on third downs. He's been accurate on third downs. Andy Dalton is showing signs of a career re-emergence here for a guy that was once upon a time viewed as about the 16th best quarterback in the NFL. So this is not unheard of. Very fun stuff from Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle, the Red Rocket, whatever you want to call him. It's been awesome. Next up is Alvin Kamara. It's just time for him to come down. He has not had the same explosiveness. He's not making as many guys miss. He's not getting those big plays. The production hasn't always been there. And now he's fumbling the football. 2 fumbles against the Niners. You can make a case he lost them that game. And it just has not been the same Alvin Kamara that we're used to. Could be that he's breaking down a little bit. Could be the off-field stuff has been a distraction for him. Could be a combination of both. But is this a beginning of a downward trajectory for what we've viewed as one of the 3 or 4 best running backs in the NFL over the last 4 or 5 years? Could be. I don't know. He's still only 27. But at least they bring in some youth and a guy like Chris Olave getting a +2 here. And, man, he is so explosive. He's showing even more verticality and explosiveness than I thought he would. I liked his speed. I thought he would make an impact as a deep threat. But when you see him set up a deep route and just fly past Jalen Ramsey, that's another level of excitement. And, I think my pro comp for him was like Greg Jennings coming out. And now it's more like Calvin Ridley is a player that he reminds me a ton of, where the route running is exceptional. His movement ability, his fluid athleticism is excellent. And the long speed is excellent. Contested catches and size and bodying up dudes might be what holds him back a little bit, but I do think Ridley is like a borderline wide receiver 1, and I think Chris Olave can get to that level rather quickly here, and he's doing it on an offense with Andy Dalton at quarterback. Yes, he's playing well, but Andy Dalton at quarterback and an offensive line that is not buying a ton of time for them to push the ball downfield. So he has been exceptional. And then Rashid Shaheed as well. What a find. He's been an undrafted pickup. And it's super small sample sizes. It's on plays that they are doing a really good job of kind of using him as a tendency breaker to kind of sneak in there and get open deep when the defense isn't expecting it. Can he get open as a starter consistently when the defense needs to plan for him? I don't know. They haven't had to ask that of him yet, but he has met every call that they've given him as a deep threat, a couple times underneath, showing that speed. He's an interesting player, as is Juwan Johnson, kind of that matchup problem, tight end 2. Dude's got like 5 touchdowns in as many weeks. He's just been a solid option for Andy Dalton in this offense when they've needed it with guys like Jarvis out, Thomas out. He's been that big-bodied target down in the red zone that they can rely on. And then as you look towards the defense, some movement up front. Carl Granderson, he is such an interesting player to me. He fell in the draft, fell out of the draft because of some off-the-field concerns, but was once upon a time viewed as a guy that if he had had a big final year at Wyoming, he could have been in that kind of top 50 of the draft conversation. He is a really big, strong athlete, not unlike some of the builds of guys that they like, guys like Peyton Turner, who's playing well, by the way, not quite enough to go up here, but had his best pass rush performance a week ago. But anyway, Carl Granderson fell in the draft for some off-field stuff, and he's been really consistent for the Saints. He's not super juiced up, but so it limits his ability as a pass rusher, but he's just really physical up front. He throws his body around and kind of creates a lot of chaos for opposing offensive linemen. And it's really good to have him be able to kind of spell Cameron Jordan from that, because Cam Jordan looks like a guy that needs to enter that sort of late career pass rusher role where he's much more of a third down player, because right now he is just not an efficient pass rusher. He looks like an absolute shell of his former self. His pressure rate has fallen completely off. You hardly notice the guy out there. He had 0 pressures against the 49ers last week. So it just, the guy's going to turn 34 soon. It is what it is. But it does feel like Cam Jordan is seeing the beginning of the end here. But the secondary, things are getting a little bit better here. The young corner, the second-round pick, Alontae Taylor, has a big interception called back against the Niners for a Chris Harris holding call. Alontae Taylor has had a pretty shaky start to his young career. He's been flushed into action with all these injuries, I think sooner than he should have been asked to step in. He was a very raw player coming out of Tennessee, but all that experience seems to have done him some well. These last couple of weeks, he's been much better. He's a really athletic guy in a talented secondary, so I like what we're seeing from Alontae Taylor. Same thing can really be said about Paulson Adebo. He had a really rough start to his sophomore campaign, and he looks healthy and explosive out there. These last 2 weeks have been much better for Paulson Adebo, so I like Paulson Adebo. I've got him as a 75 because I like him that much, but definitely a little bit of up and down for Paulson Adebo, but lately has been more up. And then, Chris Harris is going to come down to, he's just washed. There's no other way around it. You see him getting worked every week. He's getting grabbier than he has been in years past. It's just, they are excited, I think, to get Roby back healthy, hopefully Lattimore back healthy, so that they don't have to put Chris Harris out there, because he has been a problem for this defense. Wow, you guys are still here? All right, well, I want to tell you guys that the official store of That Franchise Guy is officially open for business, and even more so, we have a new product line, the Size Matters Not sweatshirt, t-shirt, coffee mug, a hybrid of Star Wars and my favorite undersized NFL quarterback. I think you guys are going to love this concept. You can rep the brand. You can support the brand. Head over to thatfranchisestore.com. Thank you for checking it out. Let's get back to studs and duds. And now our final division, the NFC West. We are going to start with the Arizona Cardinals, and a unsung hero here, their star of the month. Honestly, I don't think Cardinals fans are going to complain too much about this, given how much they've needed help in the trenches. Josh Jones. a left tackle here who they spent a third-round pick on a couple years ago. And this is, I guess, exciting for Cardinals fans because he has really been horrible at guard where they've tried him to play. They have a left tackle there in DJ Humphries, but he's been hurt the last 3 weeks. And Josh Jones, playing the position he was drafted at, left tackle from Houston, has looked super comfortable and plug and play starting caliber dude. So, we'll see where this goes. Does this make DJ Humphries available because Josh Jones, cheaper, younger? Do they try DJ Humphries out at guard or something? I don't know. It gives them more options. Everybody enjoys depth on the offensive line. And really the best thing this Cardinals team has going for them. Amongst, a decent list of okay things here. But what you don't like to see is the backup quarterback trending up and the starting quarterback trending down. Colt McCoy stepped in and played pretty damn well. Honestly, probably just had him rated a little bit too low. I think he's shown over the last couple of years in a couple opportunities that he is legitimately one of the best backup quarterbacks in the NFL. A really good mind for the game, knows where to get the ball, obvious physical limitations, but he gets the job done. So Colt McCoy is going to get some respect. But Kyler Murray is going to come down one. I think there's a lot of circumstances here that are hurting Kyler Murray, but it's not like he's full of excuses. He has DeAndre Hopkins, Rondale Moore. He's had Zach Ertz. He's had plenty of weaponry here. I don't think the offensive line is a train wreck. The run game hasn't been a train wreck. And you're just seeing a completely inconsistent season from Kyler Murray. You're seeing questionable decisions. You're seeing him bailing from clean pockets, passing up reads that are there to be made. A lot of times there's stuff in the underneath, check downs, holes in zones, stuff that he's not hitting. So he's definitely capable of better play, but he needs to come down from some of the mental stuff that he's not doing out there. And then also Robbie Anderson going to come down a decent chunk here, gets traded for a bag of peanuts from Carolina. And that's looking like a win for Carolina. Robbie Anderson just hasn't been able to get acclimated here in Arizona, and now with Marquise Brown in there, I don't know when that's going to happen. But the reality is Robbie Anderson had a very much down year last year, and we were making excuses for Robbie Anderson that, well, he's in Carolina, the quarterback play's not good, the play calling's not good. And while that stuff was true, at some point you got to produce. And he comes in this year and was horrible in Carolina again, even worse than last year, gets sent here to Arizona, and in the opportunity he had, granted with a new playbook and a new quarterback and all that, he couldn't produce. And he should have known this playbook. A big reason the Cardinals acquired him is because he is a receiver familiar with the system. So, shouldn't be any excuses left. Robbie Anderson, now, I think he's 30 years old, or he's going to turn 30. I think it's the ship has sailed until proven otherwise on Robbie Anderson. Trey McBride also needs to come down. My number one tight end in this class. You would think now that he's had the opportunity to be the starting tight end, it would really be plug and play from Zach Ertz, someone that is supposed to be a high floor, talented player. He has struggled to grasp the offense and make an impact here, and his run blocking has been way worse from what we watched at Colorado State. So I don't know what's going on there. Maybe it's the system not being a good fit for him, but Trey McBride has been a disappointment since he's gotten out there. Just like 0.02 or 0.2 yards per route run right now, which is just embarrassingly low. Then we got Kelvin Beachum at right tackle. Had a bit of a shaky start, but he has settled in and is kind of having one of his better seasons in a while, honestly. He's just such a machine. He's a weird build at right tackle. He's 6'3", 300 pounds, but he just knows how to get the job done there at right tackle. He always has. So, going up. And then left guard, Rashad Coward, whatever, he's been playing and hasn't been a complete turnstile, so going to get a little respect. Then on the defensive side of things, we have Zach Allen, who's been one of the most pleasant surprises for this Cardinals team as a whole. His transition to interior defensive line, learning from mentor J.J. Watt for the second year here, has boded well for Zach Allen. That clearly has been a transition from a guy that was an edge at Boston College, but the game is starting to click for him. He is such a high work ethic guy. That's what I loved about him out of Boston College. but he's putting it all together, and it's really just led to a complete game. He is defending the run much, much better than he ever has from that interior D-line position, but he's getting after the quarterback better than he ever has as well, with some finesse moves, some power rush ability. It's all been good there from Zach Allen this year, and he's been a part of a lot of stuff is going wrong here in Arizona, but they've actually had, especially over the last 6 weeks or so, a surprisingly solid defense. Vance Joseph gets a lot of credit for that, but these players get credit as well, and they've made some adjustments with these players and who's playing with the personnel that we're going to discuss here. So they've kind of abandoned the Dennis Gardeck deal. He's been a rotational edge for them, and his pressure rate has just vanished. He has really been giving them nothing. A guy that had 7 sacks a couple years ago. And they've gone to these young guys much more. Cameron Thomas and Myjai Sanders, both playing well in limited opportunities, a pair of third-round rookies. They really needed at least one of these guys to show that they can play at least as a replacement level guy, and both guys look pretty good. Myjai was hurt to start the year. He's actually been the more efficient pass rusher. Cameron Thomas been a little bit more well-rounded, which makes sense based on their college evals. But both guys in their own right look like serviceable NFL players. I think Myjai has upside to potentially become a starter there. But they're playing well as a part of that rotation for a pass rush that has been sneaky good. J.J. Watt, by the way, has halted his decline. He's been pretty good in the last month. But the linebacker situation is interesting as well. You're going to see there Zaven Collins getting a plus in the notes. He is supposed to be playing well. First round pick. We've got him at a 73 right now. And he's starting to play like that much more lately. Getting his hands out there in passing lanes, in coverage, showing those zone instincts that he did in college much better. So that's trending up. Next to Ben Niemann, who is an experienced veteran linebacker, has played a lot for the Chiefs, and he's playing his best football. Those Iowa linebackers are really high IQ guys. They usually are. And Ben Niemann, credit where credit's due, he's kind of fended off Isaiah Simmons as the number 2 linebacker, and has kind of carved out a nice role in this defense. Now, they move these guys all over the place, but yeah, Niemann has kind of taken that LB2 spot. And then in the secondary, you have Isaiah Simmons now being more of a slot corner safety, and I do want to talk about him because he's playing much better in that position. I think he's just more comfortable. That's what he did at Clemson, and I've got him at a 74 when he moves to safety, if you want to talk about a Madden rating. So he didn't get an adjustment here. I don't think he's necessarily playing above that, but he was certainly playing below that at linebacker, if that makes sense. So Isaiah Simmons has been a nice piece for this defense this year. He's not looking like a bust. He just hasn't necessarily returned value as that top 10 pick that they invested in him. I will say he looks incredible as a pass rusher. Could be a little Micah Parsons-esque thought process to think about there with him. But these other corners are actually playing relatively well. Marco Wilson the last month has definitely turned a corner, which is exciting because he has incredible physical tools. And Byron Murphy's been out of the lineup, so these guys have had to really step up. Antonio Hamilton has been making plays as well. He's a veteran guy. He's not a great athlete, but he is kind of a risk taker and makes plays every few weeks, so that's worth something. It's just an interesting defense. Not a lot of big names or highly invested pieces, but they're kind of getting the job done in a solid way. It's not some crazy good defense, but they've been pretty good. I also didn't mention Rondale Moore, another player that I'm a huge fan of. I've got him rated pretty high. He's playing great. He's playing up to my expectations on Rondale Moore. But if he can continue to produce like he has over the last month, definitely going to start to raise the conversation on Rondale Moore. All right, now we got San Francisco getting on a little bit of a hot streak here. Back-to-back left tackle star of the months with Trent Williams. And we know he's the best run blocker in the NFL at any position, left tackle included, but he has reached even new highs at being a shutdown, pass-protecting left tackle. Trent Williams is only getting better at 36 years old. There's no physical limitations for the guy as long as he's healthy. He's the best left tackle in football, and he's making a case to actually be the best player in the NFL independent of position. Aaron Donald trending down. I think Travis Kelce potentially in that conversation, Tyreek Hill, but Trent Williams right in that debate. He has been remarkable on his way up towards the 99 club, and I have very high standards there for that number. But also offensively, Jimmy Garoppolo going to go up. Honestly, the ball velocity looks a lot better for me from Jimmy Garoppolo. Hard not to say that there were some injuries that he was dealing with, because really it just looks a little bit better when he pushes the ball downfield. Now, he's still a limited player. I'm not saying he's some dominant deep ball thrower, but if that aspect of the offense is opening up a little bit, you're seeing a Brandon Ayuk become more involved in the offense. It just broadens this offense a little bit in a good way. Jordan Mason is now created here for my roster. He had some hype in the preseason. He won the job ahead of the third-round pick out of LSU, Tyron Davis-Price. And we didn't really get to see him until recently, and in very limited sample size, some efficient runs. So bigger guy out of Georgia Tech, maybe a extended opportunity now with Elijah Mitchell getting hurt, but looks the part, and the hype seems rather justified in limited sample size. Now, Deebo Samuel is going to come down. This is coming off the tail end of, his best career season. And it's not that Deebo's been bad, far from it. But, we had him regarded as one of the 5 best receivers in the NFL, one of the best, most impactful offensive players in the league, and he just hasn't been at that level. He hasn't had the same number of those crazy explosive run after catch plays, and when you reduce those, you start to see some of his faults as a receiver. His yards per route run, however, is about half of what it was last year. A big part of that, though, is that reduction in run after catch, but drops are a part of his game, and I've always said he's not some ultra-refined route runner. He's a good contested catch guy, but as we're seeing, his ball skills are inconsistent. So Deebo's still a monster, but definitely time he came down. And then Juwan Jennings is going to come up too. He just is the perfect role player here. You have all of these high-end playmakers that defenses are concerned with, and then Juwan Jennings sneaks out from the wing or from the slot, beats your slot corner on an out route. Not a fast receiver, but a very quick receiver at 6'3", an incredible run blocker, maybe the best this league has as a run-blocking receiver to offer, I should have said. But, yeah, he's been a really fun player on a team full of fun players. Now, George Kittle, similar with Deebo. We know George Kittle's great, and honestly, when they do target him, you can still see that he's a damn good player, but we have George Kittle rated with the best of them, and he just hasn't lived up to that. And, again, his yards per reception is pretty good, but just not able to become that focal point of the offense as he was several years ago. Just a slight ding for George Kittle, potentially getting up there in age. And, I don't want to go too far down this route, because if they started using George Kittle more, I feel like we'd feel a little differently about him. But, I think fantasy owners will agree that he just has not been quite the same. And then Jake Brundle for the second studs and duds in a row. He has really stepped in nicely. He was a massive question mark coming into the year with the retirement of Alex Mack. And like I kind of said in the Niners deep dive, I trust Kyle Shanahan's eye for that center position. And Jake Brendle's been just fine. He hasn't been some rock star, but he has not been an issue for them. And then at right guard, they've got a little bit of a competition going on. By the way, left guard Aaron Banks, I know he's having a good season. We gave him a big boost in the first studs and duds. Niners fans were upset that he didn't get a boost last time. And turns out he comes back around and has a few struggles in the last month in pass protection. So glad we didn't raise him. Not that he's a liability, but definitely trending downwards a little bit for him. But anyway, at right guard, there's a competition going on right now. Spencer Beerford, who's been fine and inconsistent, rookie right guard. they have been rotating him with Daniel Brunskill, and Brunskill has definitely outplayed him. Brunskill has started a lot of games for this Niners offense. He's a really good run blocker, and I think he does his best pass protection there at right guard. So I am curious to see if they just kind of hand that job off to him soon, or if they continue this rotation. It's always fascinating when you get O-line rotations in the NFL. Then on the defensive side of ball, these rotational pass rushers up front, Charles Omenihu, he is an eye to keep a name on. Nice. You get the point. He is someone heading into free agency. The Niners acquired him quietly last year for a 5th-round pick from the Houston Texans as they were having a yard sale. And he's a good player, man. He is a perfect fit for one of these systems. Think of the Saints, the Jets, the Niners here, these 4-man fronts that just love to move these guys around, play some explosive tweener types as a 4-eye, as a 3-tech, use them for those also effective cross stunts where Charles Omenihu can just blow shit up, let a guy like Drake Jackson or Samson Ebukam wrap in behind the mess that he has left behind. But Omenihu also capable of going one-on-one in certain matchups, using that length and explosiveness to generate some pocket push and some pressure as well. So kind of reminds me of a little bit of maybe even Eric Armstead, but on a smaller level, like a John Franklin Myers who left a system where he was a rotation and really took off as a full-time starter. Really talented player that could have a bigger free agent market than people realize. And then Drake Jackson, their 2nd-round pick, very limited opportunities, but he's been buying into the physicality up front here, doing his job. He's been a pretty good run defender for them, which they've needed because their interior group is not the best right now. So Drake Jackson, I am very confident in his future. He just hasn't had a ton of opportunities, hasn't won a ton of true pass rush snaps, but I still like his future. He's playing well. And then the linebackers here, Dre Greenlaw going to go up 2. So we dropped him after that first game of the season, the Bears game, maybe the worst game of Dre Greenlaw's career. And then right after that game, the Niners weren't worried about it because they gave him a big contract extension. And since then, he's been one of the best linebackers in the entire NFL. And this linebacking duo of him and Fred Warner, who's playing still incredible football, I think have cemented themselves as the clear-cut best linebacking duo in the NFL. And shit, Azeez Al-Shaair, their 3rd linebacker, has been outstanding. Now, I like Azeez Al-Shaair. It's been really limited sample size when he's been out there, but he's played well. Another pending free agent. I think the league is going to have their eyes on some of the depth in this front 7 heading into free agency with guys like Omenihu and Al-Shaair. I think Ebukam as well. So that's why Drake Jackson it's such a big deal that he continues to develop. And then in the secondary, Diamador Lenore has been very inconsistent, but he's had to play with injuries there to Mosley and Ambry Thomas. So, yeah, he's been fine. He's made some plays. He's gotten beat, and I don't love him as a starter heading into the playoffs, but could be worse, I suppose, than what he's doing right now. But, yeah, not ideal. And now the miserable LA Rams. Let's get through this one. They do have a star of the month, and it's actually Bobby Wagner, who has had one of his best years in a while now. Now, the flash plays that we maybe remember Bobby Wagner for haven't necessarily been there, but the consistency sure as hell has. So the Rams run a system similar to like what helped Devondre Campbell succeed in Green Bay, for example. But it's a system that limits the coverage responsibility of the linebacker. Usually they're either blitzing or responsible for the running back, or sometimes a tight end, but not dropping too deep. And Bobby Wagner at his age, I do think we've seen a loss of the extreme amount of juice that he used to have. But what's crazy about Bobby Wagner is in a season where the team looks lost, he's at his best tackling year ever. He has missed 1 tackle this year, a missed tackle percentage of 1.2%. I don't remember seeing something like that. The next best in his career, let's see. I mean, and this is one of the best tackling linebackers ever. I guess he did have a 1.4% in 2018. He's been The last 3 years, for example, though, at 7.8%, 6.4%, 4.8%. He's only had 3 years in his career under 4.8. And this is the first one he's had since 2018. So just to put that in a little bit of context, now his amount of defensive stops is down. He's not getting the ball production necessarily as a pass defender, but he's not getting beat in coverage either necessarily. So Bobby Wagner is having an excellent season for what it's worth. Do they regret signing him? I don't know. You'd have to ask them because they suck and he's 32 years old, but he has been playing great. Then we've got some role players on the offense. Kyren Williams has kind of been handed a large opportunity all of a sudden now that Darrell Henderson has been released. We know they don't fully trust Cam Akers there, who has had his ups and downs as a receiving back, going all the way back to Florida State. But, Kyren Williams, it's been small sample sizes, but he's been effective with the touches he's gotten. And it's just good to know that, he can translate his game to the next level. That was the big thing with him, is he's small and unathletic, but he is one of the more polished backs to come out of college. So, he's a crafty guy, and I like Kyren Williams. I don't see any upside for him as a long-term starter or anything, but I've always said he can be a good third down back at the NFL level, and it seems that he can. And then Tutu Atwell, their second-round pick from 2 years ago, he was a sunk cost. He couldn't get on the field. When he was on the field, he wasn't doing anything. He's 160 pounds. People laughed at this pick. Well, you know what? He's actually showing some juice, and more than some juice. He gets the big touchdown against the Saints, showing that speed, the deep ball ability. He is a burner. That's why they took him. So good to know he's got some juice and can play at the next level, and we'll see where this goes from here. Hopefully at some point getting Matthew Stafford back, although they might just shut Stafford down for the year. I don't know. And then, things just get sloppy at this point for the offense. Tyler Higbee has been a disappointment this year, most notably as a run blocker. I don't know if he's checked out or what, but he's over his career helped this run game, and not so much this year. He's been getting beat. And then the offensive line, man, it's almost not even worth talking about. It's a bunch of guys that I don't see with super bright futures, especially with Chandler Brewer, who's gotten some starts at right guard. He was fine. They bring in Matt Skura, who gets a couple starts. He was horrible. He has completely fallen off after once upon a time being viewed as a potential starter in the NFL. Coleman Shelton's the one guy that's fascinating. When he's played center for the Rams, he's actually been okay. Brian Allen gets the contract extension this last offseason, so they're probably not going to replace him, but at least a quality backup there, Coleman Shelton, who has been in and out of the lineup. It is just insane when you look at this offensive line. I would be surprised if they've had the same five any game this season. It has been this mishmash of undrafted free agents and street pickups and guys they were counting on all being in and out of the lineup. It's been a complete disaster. It's almost made evaluating this offense impossible. Now, this defense has been interesting too. They've kind of just, taken a back seat and literally just backing off, playing bend don't break defense. This team is just on autopilot right now. But one of the more disappointing players is Greg Gaines, who is in a contract year. And, the Rams might be happy that he's not playing well because maybe they can get him on the cheap and see if he can turn it around. He's been a really good player the last couple of years. But this year, the run stop percentage way down, not getting after the quarterback. He looks like just a guy out there. After the last couple of years, looking like a real piece for somebody on the D-line. Going to be a fascinating free agent to watch and see how the NFL values him. He was good for them in that Super Bowl run last year. And then a couple of these young rotational guys, Marquise Copeland out of Cincinnati, Michael Hote out of Brown, a couple of tweener athlete types playing pretty well up front in a rotational run defense role. They like to see that. And then the other linebacker, Ernest Jones. So really the best thing the Rams have had going for them consistently this year has been Bobby Wagner coming in and being that mentor for Ernest Jones, who's been really good as well. So he's going up. Third-round pick from 2021, came on late in that Super Bowl push for the Rams. He's been trending upwards and can maybe be their LB1 of the long-term future. But all three starters in the secondary are going to come down. That includes Jalen Ramsey, but David Long has really struggled. He, to me, is more of a man cover corner type. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Greedy Williams in Cleveland, maybe just a little bit being used out of scheme. Comes from Michigan, where they love their man coverage. I always like that about David Long. Not really asking him to do that here. They're asking him to play off, and he's just not a very heady player. So I think they're under-deploying him. Jalen Ramsey, he's still going to be rated as the highest cornerback in the game here, but, he's not playing necessarily like that this year. So I think it's time he comes down, and that's really all I have to say. I still love Jalen Ramsey and think very highly of him, but he's going to have to start playing like an elite corner if he wants to be rated as the best corner in the NFL. He's been a very good corner this year, but he has been beat. We saw Chris Olave run right past him for a touchdown. We've seen him get beat several other times this year, but he's had his highlight plays and still been very good at other times as well. So it's not a panic for Ramsey. Troy Hill, on the other hand, 31 years old, not really getting around the football. Seems he's over the hill. The other good thing this team has going for them is the special teams. Riley Dixon, in year 6 now, has been one of the best punters in the NFL. Really good placement on his kicks. And Matt Gay, for the second year in a row, has been one of the best kickers in the NFL after they let Greg the Leg go. Just a little note there, Aaron Donald, still an incredible pass rusher, but not quite that insane production where he transcends everybody else. There's other interior defensive linemen that are rushing the passer at a better rate than him. There's certainly other edge rushers that have surpassed him. So is he due to come down from that 99 mark? I don't know. He's injured now. We'll see if he even returns this year. But for the first time, Aaron Donald feeling like maybe not the best player in football. The first time in 3 or 4 years, honestly. And now our last team of the episode here, the Seattle Seahawks. Thanks for waiting, Seahawks fans. At least you've had it pretty good this year, and a lot of players rising again here, including your newly found star quarterback at 32 years old. Geno Smith just continues to shock the world. He hasn't been quite like at that truly elite level that he was for the first really 8 weeks of the season, but he's still been really freaking good. You're still seeing the high-end plays from Geno Smith, which is exciting, but you are starting to see more mistakes. He has just as many turnover-worthy plays as he does big-time throws in this period of time, but still highly encouraged by the overall game that he's showing. I think it's not just the highlight stuff where you are seeing really nice arm talent, escapability in the pocket, the deep ball placement, all of that, but the general processing and decision-making is pretty good, even if you're seeing a couple mistakes flare up. We didn't expect Geno Smith to keep playing at a Patrick Mahomes level, right? But the level he's playing at is still incredibly impressive, and this contract is just continuing to get more and more fascinating, and it's going to be one of my favorite storylines of the offseason to see kind of what Seattle wants to do with Geno Smith, who I think they'd be foolish at this point to not bring him back to see if this is sustainable, given where he came from and all of his upside, really, as a quarterback at this point. But it's not just him. The complementary playmakers have stepped up here. Lockett's been great. Metcalf has been great. But Travis Homer, as a third down back, has really come on lately. We bumped him up in last month's Studs and Duds, and getting a +2 here. Most notable, a big completion down the sideline during play extension, reacting with Geno Smith down the sideline, but he's been pretty consistent when they do call his number. He's even had some nice runs in there. He's just kind of the ideal backup scat back type, and I like what we've seen from him. And then Marquise Goodwin as well. His breakout, his reemergence here has been really sheltered by all the other breakouts and emergences in Seattle. And it's not quite as exciting when you see a receiver over the age of 30 who's been on a bunch of different teams play like this, but he really has been good as a third wide receiver. He's a guy that has real speed, at least in his prime, and maybe not necessarily showing that he's like cooking guys like he once did, but he's definitely getting open, and he's coming down with some tough catches, showing some physicality, and most importantly, showing the ability to stay healthy, which has really plagued Goodwin throughout his career. Once upon a time, he was in the conversation for being the #1 wide receiver for the interdivision San Francisco 49ers. So he's carved out a really nice role on this team's season and deserves some respect. Now, this right guard competition continues to inch closer and closer. The Seahawks have been rotating these guys now for like 2 months. It's weird. I don't remember a year where we've seen multiple offensive line competitions where they're straight up rotating them in game. Both these guys getting, 25, 30 snaps a game. And for a while, it was healthy for both of these guys. Gabe Jackson was playing really well early on in this rotation that started like week 6. But in this stretch, weeks 9 through 12, he doesn't seem to be a fan of it. He's not playing too well at 32 years old. Crazy looking at Gabe Jackson's PFF profile. He has literally regressed every single year of his career. Pretty wild. But he's trending downwards, while Phil Haynes, the interesting prospect that this team really seems to like, has trended upwards. So it really feels like they're not too far away from just pulling the trigger, put Phil Haynes out there full-time as the starter, and you might have a right guard of the future there that you don't have to treat as a draft need, because he's really been pretty good in pass protection for the majority of time that we've seen him in the NFL. And then the only other note I have on the offense is Kenneth Walker. So, if you're using the roster in Madden, you're going to enjoy the changes I made. I actually made him more juiced up, faster, better acceleration. When you watch Kenneth Walker play, he just moves differently than the majority of running backs out there. Now, I will say he hasn't been perfect, and my biggest criticism of Kenneth Walker was that vision. Very similar to what we're seeing from DeAndre Swift in Detroit. They don't have another great running back to go to, or another good running back to go to. And I think Kenneth Walker's physical ability transcends DeAndre Swift, but there are parallels there where he is bouncing runs outside too often, not taking what's there. Sometimes that leads to these crazy explosive plays, but sometimes it does lead to some pretty poorly graded runs as well. So Kenneth Walker, I still am really impressed by what he's shown. I think he has that LaShawn McCoy type of elusiveness as a runner, and there's plenty of time for him to get some coaching and improve that vision just a little bit. But let's talk about the defense a little bit. Darrell Taylor has really been trending down. Seahawks fans, please let me know in the comments down below. I know his snap count has dropped off dramatically. He was the player that ran on the field. He was that 12th player. Is he dealing with a nagging injury, or has he really been benched here? Because that is what it feels like. Could have looked this up, but hey, I got you guys for that. All I know is that when he's out there, he's not winning. No pressures the last couple weeks, and that includes against a Raiders offensive line that is not very good. So Darrell Taylor, they had expectations for him to take a next step up this year. Started okay, but definitely seems to be trending in the wrong direction for him. Linebacker Cody Barton is playing really well. He's been a very secure tackler. He's been far from perfect in coverage and all that stuff, but as a linebacker too, he's doing his job pretty well. And then Tariq Woolen is going to go up. He's just continuing to be very steady. When they do get beat in the passing game, it's really not him. He hasn't had the highlight plays that he maybe had in the first 8 weeks or so, but he still continues to be steady and showing that he's got a very bright future. And then Ryan Neal, the safety, has been excellent, man. He's kind of like baby Jamal Adams out there, but he just looks very comfortable. He's been a secure run defender. He's been over the field in coverage, so a late career emergence for Ryan Neal. I think, he could have a nice role as a third safety for a lot of different teams. He can wear a lot of different hats. He can go free safety, strong safety, you name it. I like Ryan Neal. He's a good physical player. And then the kicker, Jason Myers. Talk about funky PFF profiles. He is literally up and down every single year. It's why the Jets eventually let him go. But he's in an up year after a down year last year. And when he's on, he is legit one of the best kickers in the NFL. And voila, we are done. All 16 teams in the NFC for the month of November. Again, we will be back with the AFC version of this video next Friday. Thank you so much for watching. If you have not hit that like button yet, please do. Really helps me out. Make sure you're subscribed up if you aren't already. Thank you for watching. We'll see you later. Peace out.